empowerment are not afterthoughts in our budget process, but central pillar of Pakistan's fiscal strategy. So for setting the tone of the day, I would request Dr. Saima Bashir, member social sector, to enlighten the forum about objectives and context of the roundtable. Please.
Thank you, Amrina. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum, and I would like to welcome you all to the policy dialogue on strengthening fiscal policies for inclusive and sustainable development, advancing child and gender responsive public investment. So as we all know that Pakistan currently stands at a critical juncture and is navigating a complex and fragile macroeconomic landscape. Looking back at the fiscal budget for financial year 2022 and 23, the budget deficit stood at 6.8% of the GDP, followed by temporary relief in 2024-25. However, the situation is still being worsened by the debt to GDP ratio of over 70%. Persistent low tax revenues below 10% of the GDP, rising debt servicing obligations, and inflationary pressures. Tightening budgets and increasing socioeconomic vulnerability are leading to significant cuts in other designated sectors of the budgetary allocations, with the social sector suffering the major blow. The most compromised sectors are health, nutrition, education, and social protection, fueling crises such as illiteracy, malnutrition, poor hygiene practices, weak protection systems, poverty, unemployment, and social instability in the country. The crises are further being exacerbated against the backdrop of cross-cutting themes such as climate vulnerability, lack of access to and compatibility with technological advancements, and gender and regional disparity in the country. Children, adolescents, and the youth constitute 60% of Pakistan's population. Policy commitments and financial allocations towards the social sector do exist, but are often misaligned with the needs of these vulnerable groups of the society. And there is also misalignment between national development commitments and provincial allocations. Delving further into this demographic marginalized communities, particularly adolescent girls, children with disabilities, and the approximately 26 million out-of-school children, especially constitute the target group for a renewed policy and strategic framework. This is a timely and crucial dialogue aiming to facilitate a solution-oriented discussion among policymakers, parliamentarians, civil society, and technical experts, where we will not only explore practical options for creating fiscal space within the existing budgetary capacities, but also consider the possibility of exploring alternative financing mechanisms and ensuring that resources are allocated transparently and equitably. Ultimately, this dialogue is about aligning Pakistan's fiscal strategy with its social and human development goals, ensuring that robust investments are made in a way that is inclusive, efficient, and sustainable. These vulnerable groups are our country's future, and the time has come that we invest in revamping the social landscape of our country and generating actionable recommendations that place our children at the heart of Pakistan's development agenda. This expert roundtable is designed to be solution-focused, data-driven, and forward-looking. Over the next few hours, we will engage in candid conversations around three key themes: provincial social sector investments, understanding the constraints, gaps, and opportunities in education, health, and social protection across Pakistan's provinces. The second panel discussion will delve into the macroeconomic context, examining tax justice, debt management, and the need for more equitable public finance system. And the third one look at the alternate financing solutions, identifying new ways to find development through blended finance, digital innovations, and public-private partnerships. We will also consider how parliamentary oversight, evidence-based policy, and cross-sector coordination can help make public spending more transparent, accountable, and inclusive. Your insights today will help shape fiscal policy recommendations for the upcoming 2025-26 budget cycle. So I encourage all the participants to actively engage in question and answer sessions and share your expertise. Even in a time of fiscal constraints, we still have choices. And the best choice we can make is to invest wisely in the people of Pakistan, especially those who are most at risk of being left behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, madam. Let us use today's dialogue to move from evidence to impact and from policy talk to policy change. With this, now I would request Dr. Abdul Qayyum Suleri for his valuable comments. Sir, over to you.
Thank you. Honorable Dr. Ali Talpur Sahib, Ma'am Saima Bashir Sahiba, distinguished guests, delegates from UNICEF, from development sector, academia, and media community. It's indeed an honor to be here and kickstart this discussion, which, as Dr. Saima rightly mentioned, is quite relevant for today. Let me begin by sharing that Honorable Minister Saab, who was supposed to deliver his keynote address today, due to his engagement in Prime Minister House, late night, he messaged and informed me that he will not be able to join. Thank you, Dr. for representing him. But the point I'm trying to make that Minister Saab showed keen interest in this discussion, and he wanted a summarized form of recommendations so that these recommendations can be utilized in this pre-budget preparation discussions. While conveying his regret for not being in person here, he's very much looking forward to whatever would be discussed here and how it can be fed into this policy making system, these processes. Dr. Saima gave the picture of a glass half empty. I would also like to compliment it while endorsing whatever she said, that also we need to also look at the glass half full. And this half full is due to IMF current program, which is providing macroeconomic stability. So while things are where Dr. Saima told and shared today, but I think in 2022, 2023, things were much worse. And it was because of this IMF program that today one can look back and have confidence in this economy, which is sustaining, which has reversed from on the brink of collapse. The size of GDP has grown to $411 billion now. Inflation is reined in. The dollar, the rupee dollar parity is stable, and reserves, especially the foreign exchange reserves, those are increasing. And it is for the first time that Pakistan is preparing its budget while being in two IMF programs. The first one is Extended Fund Facility Program, and the second one is Climate Resilience Fund, Resilience Sustainability Fund. These two, while they have their own repercussions, they also open up a window of opportunity. And that is where Dr. Saima rightly pointed out, towards utilizing this fiscal space where possible, and especially through Climate Resilience Fund, towards adolescent girls, the marginalized communities, the children, health and nutrition. And these are the sectors which have direct linkages with the climate change. Climate change is affecting them negatively, and this RSF that we are getting from IMF, that gives us some sort of leeway to divert some of the spending, tagging it with the climate change, neutralizing the impacts of climate change, improving the preparedness for climate change, improving the preparedness for disaster, and being able to spend that money on social sector. As I said, that both of these programs, Extended Fund Facility Program and this Climate Resilience Program, if one tries to compare it at times, it seems that both of them, they contradict each other. In the Extended Fund Facility Program, we are talking of, for example, and rightly, eliminating capacity payment charges in energy sector. We are talking of eliminating energy circular debt, which would mean increasing the prices of electricity, gas, diesel, petrol, and all of them. They are necessary steps to clear the backlog of circular debts. In Climate Resilience Fund, we are talking of uptake of clean and green energy, and also the renewables, EVs, and all other. This is apparent contradiction, again, is sort of a window of opportunity to increase the green uptake of energy while reducing the backlog of energy circular debt. Likewise, as chief economist, joint chief economist, he would be sharing perhaps the increased allocation on for BISP. I'm expecting that this year it would be a historic allocation for Benazir Income Support Program, and that is again one of the commitment that Pakistan has made with the IMF, so that some of the negative consequences or the side effects of IMF Extended Fund Facility Program can be tackled through BISP increased allocation. So the point I'm trying to make that while entering in 25-26, the signals are mixed, and there are challenges as well as opportunities. Challenges are, as we know, remaining in an IMF program following the austerity drive, following the monetary consolidation, fiscal consolidation, and fiscal discipline. And the opportunity is that with this second IMF program that purely focuses on Pakistan's preparedness against climate change, there are windows of opportunities where we can increase our social sector spending. We also have learned this province's proactive role in tackling many of these issues. Again, perhaps a joint chief economist would like to share some of the commitments with IMF, whereby now we know that federal government would not be able to invest in any social sector spending which is designed only for one province, which means, and if there is any intervention which is designed for a single province, the province will have to share the burden of it. We also know that any intervention which is more than 7.5 billion rupees would have to be addressed through climate change impact assessment. We also know the CPMA, which is Climate Public Investment Management Assessment, which would be now the new norm for most of the public sector spending. And all these things, they are actually providing us an opportunity while we are talking of our impact of spending on how to tackle the impacts of climate change to actually divert many of those spendings for the marginalized segments of society, which will be worst hit in case of any climate change externalities, which would be worst hit in case of any extreme climate change these events. And this is where one can think of a win-win situation, merge this agenda of climate change preparedness with the agenda of leaving no one behind, and focusing on adolescent girls, on advancing child and gender responsive public investment. And I can speak for hours that how climate change have a negative proportionate impact on gender and how it has negative proportionate impact on girl children and adolescent children. So one is looking forward to the next federal budget with the hope that some of the lacunas that member social sector pointed out and some of the priorities that she rightly pointed out could be addressed through next budget. And today's discussion would not only focus on federal government's role, but also the provincial government's role. And I thank the team STPI as well as the team UNICEF for supporting this dialogue. UNICEF has been quite proactive and quite advanced in taking these discussions forward. And together, public sector, the policy making, Apex Policy Making Forum, that is Planning Commission, UNICEF, the UN system, and SDPI, an independent policy think tank. Together, we can think of solutions, we can discuss challenges, but also think of solutions that can help decision makers taking right decisions at right time. Thank you very much for your attention, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable comments. Now, I would request Madam Sharmila Rasool, UNICEF representative in Pakistan, to share her thoughts with this forum.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. Special regards from UNICEF Pakistan to all of you. Very pleased to be here on behalf of my agency and on behalf of our representative. He sends his warm regards. He has been called into an emergency, so he's handling that right now. And I'm here on his behalf and my agency. The UNICEF name was mentioned so many times, so I am sure that we have contributed a lot to this discussion. And I'm pleased to see that that recognition is given to an agency that is trusted and has credibility working with Pakistan. We are only 1 year younger than Pakistan. So we have been in Pakistan as long as Pakistan has been, as a nation. So let me now talk about the crust of the matter today. We are very pleased that Pakistan has decided on the 5E approach as a policy. And for us, from the UN, we see this as a forward-thinking, innovative, out-of-the-box approach. So this is, first of all, commendation to the government of Pakistan and the Planning and Development Ministry, the work that, and SDPI for the excellent work that they have done to take Pakistan forward. Having said that, we also know we are living in a VUCA world. I'm sure everybody knows what VUCA is. It's not a UN term. It's a term that is used across the globe. VUCA means is highly vulnerable or volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. A VUCA world constantly changes, has new challenges, puts us into unexpected spots. Sometimes the blind spots emerges without any advance notice. So it's, in simple words, it's a difficult situation that we are all of us in, not just Pakistan, but the entire world. So when surviving in a VUCA world, where do you make the biggest investments? What's the investment for Pakistan that is really, really useful at this point of time? I want to say that is the human capital of Pakistan. Human capital belongs to this country, this sovereign nation, and it's a sovereign resource. So I also want to, in the same line, say the HCI, the Human Capital Index, places Pakistan at 0.41 rank, which means every child that is born today will only reach 41% of her or his, or if it's a transgender, potential when it reaches an adult. Only 41% of the real potential can be reached if you are born today in this country, because you are placed at 0.41 rating in the Human Capital Index. So it's very clear where your investment needs to go. It's the human capital. You can't just talk about the human capital without talking about the source of the human capital. And that is your children. And we know the situation of the children in the country, not because I'm from UNICEF, but this is real facts that I want to narrate. The children in Pakistan, the situation is not bright. It's bleak. The inequalities of wealth distribution and allocation has manifested in several serious data points that are impacting the children. And what are these data points? 26.9 million children are out of school. I'm from Sri Lanka, by the way, and it looks, for me, the entire Sri Lanka is out of school. And Sri Lanka is 22 million people. So the 26.9 million children is even higher than the population in Sri Lanka. And as if my entire country doesn't go to school. I just want to put it to perspective. There's 1 in every 3 children that is malnourished, stunted or wasted. Neonatal mortality in this country is higher in the region. I will also put that into perspective because the numbers sometimes we forget. But if I give you a perspective, you'll remember. I want to make an impression on each and every one of us so that we, as decision makers, as advocates, as contributors to Pakistan's development, remember this. So the neonatal mortality in the country is like 2 plane crashes happening every day, but these planes are filled with babies. When we hear about a plane crash, we talk about it for weeks, months sometimes. But every day there are 2 plane crashes in Pakistan with babies. So these inequalities in investment allocation of resources have manifested in these data points. We together must resolve that these data points cannot stay as data points. These are not inevitable. This needs to change. How do we change it? First of all, we congratulate you on the PER, public expenditure reviews, that you have already started in provinces. And we from UNICEF are very glad that we were part of it. That's the step in the right direction. That's a really smart move. Now, to talk about the not smart moves, not so smart moves, if the head table permits. If you look at your Debt Limitation Act, you have a limitation in the country, and that is the percentage is 56.7%. That's a threshold mentioned in the Debt Limitation Act. But your liabilities have reached 67.5% of the GDP. So you are violating your Debt Limitation Act. Am I right, Sadar? This cannot be the case. Because if you have a law to guide a country about debts that you can take, you need to stay within that threshold. So something immediately must be done. So your fiscal discipline, although there are improvements, which we acknowledge as the UN and the UNICEF, PER being one towards that, this needs to change. Secondly, your investments that are happening into education, it's 1.7 from your GDP. And to health, it's 2.9 from your GDP. These are well below the global averages. For education, the global average for GDP in any nation is 4.5%. And you're at 1.7%. You're less than half. For health, it's 6%, the global average, and you're in 2.9%, less than half. These are indications that immediate action needs to be taken. Let's look at your tax system. Your tax system, there is this new topic, not so new, but new to Pakistan, tax justice. We talk about tax justice. What does tax justice mean? Taxing in a manner that it is put to equitable use. Justice and equity goes hand in hand, correct? Your taxing system is structured in a way that it is regressive. I'm really sorry, I have to give these hard messages, because if we don't critically analyze where we are, we will not fix it. And I'm Sri Lankan, so I'm your neighbor. We share these problems in my country. So structure say, tax the poorest 10% and they pay 16% of their income. And then your richest 10% only pays 9%. So the poorest 10% pays 16%, your richest 10% pays only 9%. This, we think, is a regressive tax system. So if we are talking about tax justice, let's change this. So this is the second action point that we are suggesting. In UNICEF, we are deeply committed to see that inequities must end. And it must end when the child is born, so that when the child becomes an adult, the child is ready to contribute to its country 100%, not 41% of the full potential as a citizen. So what is our message from UNICEF? Technically, we will be engaged with the government throughout this journey to help you become much more disciplined in your physical space, much more equitable in your allocation, and much more aligned with your own laws, starting with your Debt Limitation Act. So those are the three messages I have from UNICEF. I'm here for this discussion. I wish all of us a very productive engagement, an engagement that is honest, sincere, and transformative. Transformative in a way that the discussions just don't stay in words, but we resolve today these discussions, then become actions that we all jointly take. So with that, thank you very much for having us here. As always, it's a pleasure to work with the government of Pakistan and especially the ministry. And we have a long-standing relationship with you, and we will continue to have the relationship. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we are grateful to our partners, UNICEF and STPI, for co-hosting this event. Now, I would request Joint Chief Economist, Dr. Muhammad Ali Talpur Saab, for opening remarks, as well as for chairing the session number 1 on social sector public investment in provinces. Sir, over to you.
Honorable Madam Sharmila Rasool, Dr. Simon Bashir, Dr. Abid Sulari, distinguished guests from different walks of life, Assalamu alaikum and very good morning. We have always found UNICEF our great partner, and thank you very much for highlighting the great points. And I also thank Dr. Abid Sulari. He has always been an advocate of the sustainable development, and he's always on the forefront for the great policy dialogue. Your presence here is an honor for us. Thank you, Dr. Since the Honorable Minister was supposed to chair this session and present his keynote, but due to pressing engagements of the Honorable Minister, sir, I have to convey his message to the forum. So first of all, I will read the message of the Honorable Minister. At this defining moment in Pakistan's development journey, we gather with the shared commitment to forge a fiscal pathway that is not only sustainable, but also deeply inclusive. The government's Udan Pakistan framework, particularly the pillar on equity and empowerment, calls for such a reorientation. where fiscal policy becomes an engine of uplifting Pakistan's most underserved citizens. Our fiscal choices are not just numbers on a balance sheet, they are moral and development decisions. They signal whose lives matter most in our national priorities. We are navigating one of the tightest fiscal spaces in recent history. Public debt stands at over 70% of GDP. Our tax to GDP ratio remains below 10%, limiting the room for social investments. Yet, the Udan Pakistan compels us to confront this reality with boldness, to ensure that scarce resources are channeled to where the returns, both social and economic, are greatest. The burden of austerity is also borne equally. Children, adolescent girls, and low-income families are hit hardest when budgets contract. With over 21.91% of Pakistan's living below poverty line, and with child productivity potential at just 40%, as you mentioned, we cannot afford to ignore the equity gap. This is exactly the challenge, the equity and empowerment agenda, which is mainly part of our Udan Pakistan framework, addresses the transforming human capital into greatest asset for growth and resilience. Let's be clear, fiscal policy is social policy. Every tax reform and every budget line in a decision about inclusion or exclusion. When we make a decision regarding taxation, it is exclusion or inclusion. Empowering women, adolescent girls, and youth through targeted fiscal allocations is not a welfare issue. It is an economic imperative. Our development trajectory depends on expanding access to education, healthcare, and protection. With female labor force participation still below 25%, we must invest in breaking structural barriers. Udan Pakistan's equity and empowerment agenda underscores the need for integrated investments in education, underscores the need for integrated investments in green life, particularly in poorest districts of Pakistan. We must transition to progress and equitable taxation, where those who have more contribute more. Who have more should contribute more. The point has well taken in the Udan Pakistan, as you mentioned, you highlighted. This is how we convert revenue into empowerment. Efficiency and transparency are non-negotiable. Digital public finance systems, results-based budgeting, and transparent procurement are already under reform, but they must now be embedded at every level of governance. These are critical enablers of equity and empowerment agenda, ensuring each rupee works harder for inclusion. We must also explore complementary financing solutions, public-private partnerships, social impact investments, and climate-linked financing. These innovations should also replace public responsibility, but rather extend the reach of equity-focused public investments. Intergovernmental coordination is vital. No child's opportunity should be determined by geography. Udan Pakistan calls for equitable service delivery across provinces, an ambition that hinges on strong fiscal coordination and aligned priorities. Our parliaments and oversight institutions must play a central role. They must scrutinize budgets not just for numbers but for impact, especially on children, youth, and marginalized groups. Under Udan Pakistan, the accountability of inclusive development does not rest with one ministry only. It rests with the whole of the government. I am pleased to announce the formation of a high-level technical working group bringing together government, economists, and development partners. This group will explore how we can reallocate existing funds, ensure alignment with Udan Pakistan framework and Pakistan's SDGs commitment by identifying new fiscal opportunities, finding alternative financing opportunities, and building resilience through smarter, fairer spending. Today's dialogue is not a standalone event. It is a building block in a wider shift toward a rights-based, equity-focused fiscal component. Consistent with Udan Pakistan's call to an action. Let's move beyond commitments. Let's deliver concrete outcomes and let's leave here united in one resolve. To ensure that every rupee spent in Pakistan advances the goals of equity and empowerment for every child, every woman, and every underserved community. Thank you. So I think with this, with your permission, we are moving for a panel discussion. Our first panel has the topic of social sector public investments in provinces, challenges and opportunities. We have our distinguished speakers from provinces, since the topic relates to mainly to the provinces. So we would like to learn from the provinces how they are handling this issue, what they are facing. Okay. Actually, Dr. Please, most of them are virtual. Due to inconvenience made in arranging this program at a short nick of time, most of our panelists couldn't arrive here in Islamabad, so they have joined us virtually. So even then, we thank them that they have shown their interest in sharing their views in our agenda. So we have with us for a panel discussion Mr. Rafiq Mustafa Sheikh. He is member Social Sector Planning and Development, Government of Sindh, Karachi. Honorable speaker is joining us virtually. Sir, are you there?
Sir, I am Naila Sarfraz Bhatti, Assistant Chief Foreign Aid, representing Rafiq Mustafa Sheikh Saab. He has gone to a second committee room. There is a meeting of social protection, so he has gone there for a few minutes. He will join back, but on his representation, I can discuss these points. Sir, this is the first point of social sector public investment.
Okay, ma'am, hold on, please.
Yes.
Let me introduce the other speakers, please.
Right, sir. Right.
Thank you, ma'am. Another honorable speaker with us is Mr. Mohammad Aslam Sumro. He is Chief Economist, Planning and Development, Government of Sindh. He is also joining us virtually. Sir, are you there?
Sir, he is also. Sir, I am again Naila Sarfraz. Sir, I am in second room. Aslam Sumro and Rafiq Mustafa Sheikh are in a meeting of that is pertaining to Project Steering Committee of Social Protection. Sir, they will come and join in few minutes. And sir, we can continue these discussions.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. And third speaker with us is Mr. Amir Hussain. He is Chief CSR, Government of Balochistan. So, okay. We have also with Dr. Lutfur Rahman. He's Director Research, Government of Balochistan, Planning and Development Department, Government of Balochistan. You are here. Thank you for joining us. And Mr. Amir Hussain. No. Mr. Amir Hussain is there. You are representing him. Okay. And we also have Mr. Bilal Khusro from Government of KP. He is also joining us online. Mr. Bilal, are you there, sir?
Sir, yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So let me have some points before you, and then we will move for a panel discussion. So today we are here to discuss the deeper structural macroeconomic constraints that shape our ability to invest in people, and especially the marginalized people, especially the gender-related subjects, especially the most vulnerable. After 18th Amendment, the subject has mainly transferred to the provinces, yet the responsibility has not been completely shifted to the provinces, and the federal government also used to invest and work for this equity in this program. Our shared national goal is to improve outcomes, education, health, and nutrition, and social protection, particularly for those most at risk. The data speaks for itself that 25.6 million children aged 5 to 16 remain out of school. Among those in school, only 56.1% of grade 4 students can read English, and just 49.4% pass basic math. In some provinces, we are witnessing a worrying trend. While some are doing better, which may or may not be translating into positive social. So overall, the state of education is not worth listening or worth discussing. Same is the situation in our other sectors, particularly in the health sector. So this is where better planning tools can make difference. Allocations for these sectors, as Madam Sharmila has already mentioned, that our budgets, our proposed investment for these vital subjects, who are particularly for the marginalized classes, are very low, and even far less low among the regional countries as well. So this is a great point to think over it. Let me stress provinces lead in service delivery since the subject has been transferred to the provinces. The federal government remains a partner in equity, working to ensure that no child, no girl, no community is left behind. So with this, I open the session. I will place the question before the panelists. We'll rightly start from the honorable guest who is present in the house from Balochistan. Sir, would you please enlighten us on the issues you face while addressing these issues in your provinces, while budgeting, planning, and addressing to these specific issues, please?
Thank you very much, sir, and I thank you all for such a mind-opening of the session, because we came with a very narrow scope of this session in our minds, but you gave us new avenues to think of and implement them in our policy making. First of all, I would like to present some statistics from a public expenditure review of Balochistan that was conducted by UNICEF, and then I have my own analysis of 30 years of PSDP of Balochistan which will give us a precise picture of what happened and what preferences changed after 18th Amendment in our spendings. So let me start with a brief introduction. We have an agrarian economy with a tax revenue base of very low figure, that's 0.6% of provincial GDP, and 90% of our spendings rely on federal transfers. So basically, UNICEF had conducted a PER on 6 sectors that are health, education, social protection, child protection, water and sanitation, and nutrition. So the review period of analysis was 2017 to 2020. Total expenditure on the said 6 sectors during 2020-21 was 46%, out of which 47% was spent on children. For the 4 years, 18% of this expenditure was made on education, of which 80% was on children. But still, we have very surprising facts in this PR that 59% of our primary schools are non-functional, which means the schools which have only one teacher in their SNEs, but still they are non-functional due to non-appointment of teachers or any other reasons. So, which means we are making investments on building infrastructure rather than human capital as suggested by Madam. 12% of this expenditure was made on social protection, out of which 3% was spent on children health. 4% on nutrition, out of which majority was spent on children. 5% on wash, out of which 50% was spent on children, and only 0.01% on child protection. However, Balochistan has the highest rate of household, talking about the health, we have the highest rate of household out-of-pocket spending for health. Health spending values per capita and as a share of GDP lag behind the international norms as well as from other provinces. The international norm is about 3% of GDP, whereas we have only 0.7% as health spendings. Now, talking about the changed preferences after 18th Amendment, I will give you a short and a very short analysis. Like I took some of the sectors: food, health, higher education, public health engineering, school education, social welfare, and women development. So from 1993 onwards, we have an expenditure of 220,000 million on these sectors. But for your surprise, from 1993 to 2010, in 17 years, we had spent 112 billion on these sectors, while after that, in next 15 years, we spent only 118 billion. So if we consider the inflation rate and other factors, I think we lagged much behind, because inflation, let me give you an example. We have Balochistan flats here in a very prime location, G8, which was built in 1993 with a cost of 15 million only. But nowadays, it's the property of billions of rupees. So it means after 18th Amendment, we started spending on infrastructure rather than social sector, because before that, we had the support of federal government in these areas. Another thing, growth in social protection expenditure is overrepresented by non-contributory pensions in Balochistan, which is around 79 to 90%. Recommendations, I have some recommendations about improvements we can make the linkages between planning and budgeting aligned with each other so that there is a proper link between planning and execution as well as financing of those schemes. Multi-sectoral collaboration should be improved, and we should encourage public-private partnership more. That's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The same question I would like to place before our distinguished speaker from KP. Sir, you have joined us virtually. So would you please share your experiences that how you have been budgeting, preparing budgets and extending meaningful budgets for the social sector, particularly the inclusive growth related components. Bilal Saab, please.
Thank you very much, sir. A warm welcome from our side to our distinguished guest, which you are hosting, sir. I would be a bit on an extempore level because just in the nick of time, I was asked to join your team, but thanks God I picked the idea. Social sector financing, as far as my past association with UNICEF is concerned, the government of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is according top priority to these basic service delivery sectors, especially the primary education, and keeping in view the socioeconomic backwardness of my province, more emphasis is then placed on the rural female education. As we all know, more than half of the province is lagging far behind in these development indices as far as the social sectors are concerned. On top, having significant levels of indicators like the infant mortality rate and maternal mortality rate, followed by the education indicators. But the investment is no doubt that is being taken care of. And we are right now at a critical stage of our budget formulation for the next financial year. Our financial year, we all know, is starting from January each year. And this year we are lucky enough to have in front of us a very comprehensive set of strategies, as our chief economist enlightened the participants in the start of this session. The Udan Pakistan program, which is basically a national economic transformation plan. And it is based on a 5 E's framework with equity as one of the E's of this entire strategy, and transforming the economy into a $1 trillion economy by a fixed date within the next few years. So over there, we are also aligning our budget strategies in a much more appreciable manner compared to the previous years. But there are a lot of complementing issues, rather challenges, which we are facing. Security on top, although we are now in an economic resuscitation mode, trying to bring back our economy on board to avail opportunities of curing our economy. But our geopolitical situation is one of the most critical challenges that the government of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is right now facing, especially in our entire tribal belt, which is inclusive of around 8 critical districts, which are no doubt one of the most backward districts in the province. So 8 out of 36 districts, it is also in terms of the area as well as population. It's a critical area of major concern for us. But we are trying our best. One of the interesting points that was most probably touched by our guest from UNICEF, comparing the international figures, just like 6% of the GDP for health and similar trend for education sector. So this is an area of concern that in our economic challenges currently, while we are also struggling between the federation and the province's role and delegation of powers and devolution from the federation to the provinces and onwards to the district level, there is still a little bit of reliance on our federal PSDP programs, which is also shrinking. And given the inflation as one of the major impediment, I'm afraid our PSDP is currently less than 1% of the GDP, which is a biggest challenge for us. So provinces are struggling through a good deal of financial support for financing these priority sectors in the on the social arena, to meet the equity challenges, to bring the so far ignored portion of population in the mainstream of development. But they are also simultaneously facing the challenges of security on the one hand and the equitable financing on the other hand. But the more we invest, the more we are still facing challenges. But we are hopeful that we will be, as far as the challenges are concerned, which are in front of us, there are clear-cut indicators in front of us, translated on the one hand to the SDGs and on the other hand to our indigenous, this new plan of Udan Pakistan. So we are aligning our strategies. And these type of consultations, including the August session today, this is going to help us to a greater level in harnessing our entire strategy for coping up with these challenges. Another area which I would like to share as far as my personal experience is concerned is the need for aggressive data sets. Something like, since I was associated with that, the UNICEF PET multiple indicator cluster survey. Luckily, I was the first one to introduce this in Pakistan back in 2001, and it is being replicated in a number of provinces, including my own province, where even now we are working on the new mixed survey for the year 2025. So these type of data sets are much more important to gauge the actual need as far as the population indices are concerned, and onwards to link them with the financing strategies of the government. So these are just a few points from my side, and I'll be joining you again and again in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bilal sir. With your very insightful narration of the issues your province is facing regarding inclusive growth. So now I'd like to request our distinguished speaker from Sindh, if they are back and they have joined us, please, would you like to share your experiences regarding addressing the issues of equity and their budgeting, their financing in your system?
Sir, may I add few points?
Sure, please go ahead with me.
Sir, government of Sindh is also facing similar issues, just like other provinces, Balochistan and KP. Our revenues are also based on federal transfers, that is around 62%, and then it is followed by the provincial receipts. Sir, for the upcoming fiscal year, government of Sindh is going to present 3 trillion balanced budget, and that will constitute foreign project assistance and federal grants and PSDP. Sir, we wanted to focus on the social sector. So that's why we also obtained loans from World Bank, ADB, European Investment Bank, and other international development partners to facilitate and provide service delivery to our people. Sir, we have focused on education sector, health sector, and for social protection and out of school children. Sir, we have also gone to improve the cash receipts. For that, we are planning a service delivery improvement project with the support of World Bank. And sir, again, we have focused on housing sector. As you all know that due to the floods, Sindh was the most hit province. So people faced various issues. So we have launched a mega housing project with the support of our international development partners. And sir, we are also supporting wash sector to resolve the issues of people. And sir, as far as our next budget is concerned, sir, there will be a balanced budget and total outlay may account for 959 billion. And sir, our next year's budget will be a balanced budget. We have focused on our these areas and receipts of federal government and our provincial cash transfers. So, sir, this is my point of view, and we can continue on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And we also know that Sindh has invested plenty of amounts in social sector, and we expect the good results since these are economic investments. So will be yielding in after a long time. Yet we expect good results from your investments. Sir, with your permission, now we open the discussion for the House. If you have some questions, please raise your hand, and I would request to limit your question and comment so that it should be to the point and discussable and narratable. So the House is open. Thank you.
Sir, thank you so much. Sir, I would also like to add one point that we are very thankful to Ministry of Planning that with their support, we are also engaged on the initiatives just like Udan Pakistan, and we have finalized Sindh chapter and shared with Ministry of Planning. And sir, we are also planning our 13th 5-year budget plan that is aligned with the Udan Pakistan and the indicators 5 E's framework.
Ma'am, thank you. Thank you for your additional comment. Please introduce yourself and then ask the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mirajul Haq, Associate Professor, School of Economics, International Islamic University. I think after 18 amendment, constitutional amendment, the scope of provincial finance commissions has been increased to cope with the issues of inclusion, inclusiveness, and sustainability. As you know, many taxes are now provincial subject, and many social sector, health, education, water supply, environment, these are now provincial subject. My question is, what deep reforms these provinces have been made to cope with these issues? I think the prerequisite to harvest the potential gain of this 18 Amendment and provincial financial autonomy as local government. How these provinces have been made any reforms to develop local government, because the potential gain of these 18 Amendment mean this provincial autonomy is strictly linked with the local government. Thank you.
So the honorable speakers are requested to respond to the questions voluntarily and pick as per your convenience, please. Would you like a response, please?
For the empowerment of local governments, I suggest Dr. Asim Bashir has a very interesting point of view that it's not just the provincial governments that do not want to implement local governments, but it's a bigger game. I think it's not feasible, or although we have legislations, Local Government Act 2011 and other provinces as well, they have implemented some reforms, but that seem to be documentary, not practical.
Any other speaker who would like to respond to the question? Okay, thank you. Any other question, please? Ma'am, please.
Thank you. This is Dr. Farah. I'm from UNHCR and sorry. Okay, thank you. From basically,
since we are talking about equity.
Yeah. So I'm working in child protection and worked in education sector too. I'm grateful to all of you for having UNHCR representation here. My only concern here is that, like, we are very grateful to Planning Ministry and to the provincial ministries for focusing on inclusiveness, especially children in education sector and in child protection services. My concern at the moment, it's not only my concern, it's a concern of all the refugees in Pakistan who have legal documents. I'm not talking about those who don't have legal documents. We have ratified CRC. We have worked, like, we are committed to CEDAW. We have worked on SDGs. Maybe Pakistan was, I think, the first country in this region who worked on SDGs. I won't take long, but my objective is just to say that we are ready to build capacity of your child protection institutes. We are ready to support, like we supported through our Raha program, a lot of infrastructure in different schools of Punjab, KP, and Balochistan. But here our concern is just a question that in Punjab province, maybe Punjab government can respond to that. It's a query that Director General of Punjab Province for Child Protection Institute has sent the letters to different institutes not to include refugee children who are unaccompanied, separated. They are not terrorists for services. So when we speak to them, they are ready locally, but they say we have a letter that we cannot include refugee children. Same is for schools. Even with legal documents, there is eviction started in schools without even like taking the school leaving certificates. They're just evicted. So this is something that like we do understand. You people are talking about financial needs. Of course, we do have, the government has financial needs. But in the same time, our ambition is in every topic, we are focused on inclusiveness of ignored, marginalized population and equity. So in consideration to the commitment of the government, I would request that if anybody from Punjab government can respond to this query. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your question. I don't think so. Someone is from Punjab has joined us. You are from? You have question. Okay. Sorry, ma'am. Your question is particular and specific with respect to Punjab, since there is no one from Punjab here to respond. So we will forward your question to the concerned quarters after this meeting. Okay.
Please.
Ma'am, first, please, you have the floor. We will come back to you.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Tarpal. And really, amazing moderation when it comes to such a diverse panel. And what Dr. Abid Suleri and Sharmila Rasool has very rightly mentioned, I mean, when it comes to the adolescent girls, I really would like to, ask that every province, except Punjab, because since they are not here, KP mentioned two key areas: public-private partnership, multi-sectoralism, and then also, like Balochistan mentioned, and KP mentioned they have less than 1% of the total, a PSDP of contributing to the GDP. The recommendations are there. We all know what needs to be done. But when it comes to how it needs to be done, I think that's where we need to really focus, because we have these budget analysis, we have spending analysis with us. Yeah. The only part that we really need to focus is that how this discussion can be translated into actionable points, because if we are really serious, and then if we are talking about SDGs to be achieved by 2030, we are just like 5.5 years away from that. So what are the key concrete actions to be taken at each provincial level that can be translated?
I would like to request the honorable speakers to respond to the question that what are the specific actions that you have applied, since you have identified the gaps, the issues. So have you planned for the actions for next budgets and your strategies in your programs? So I will request the honorable speaker from KP to respond, please.
Thank you, sir. Yes, of course, the strategies are very much there. The word priority in itself is crystal clear. So priority does not only mean that it is just a political slogan or something like that. We are ensuring the first and foremost, as far as the priority is concerned, the first and foremost, I remember a saying in our Pashto language that everything starts from money. So the financing is very much there. If I have to just quote a little bit of a scenario of our tribal areas, we now call them the merged districts. So 6.2% of the current financial year, 6.2%, which is a handsome amount in primary education, 17.2% of the annual development program goes to the health sector. From another dimension, because we are addressing our merged districts from two different angles through two different programs. Now, there is another program, the Accelerated Implementation Program. I'm talking just only keeping in view the remotest of our districts, as I earlier pinpointed, 8 of them, 8 districts out of 36 districts of the province. 9.2% for the elementary education and 9.7% of the health. So 18 and this is a considerable amount going in there. Now, complementing this available allocation of funds, we have a set of institutional reforms, a few tiers of governance, resourcing, legal framework, steering, ensuring effectiveness, keeping in view a robust mechanism of monitoring of of all the activities being planned and programmed, and also ensuring a decision support system through availability of data sets to make it a success story. So these are very much there. What my concern, as you refer to my one point, is the needs are much higher, and equity as such is not a very easy job to ensure when it comes to ensuring parity of two different, the higher developed and the least developed. So time factor is one of the important point in my opinion. So, but there are actions which are very much there, and there are simultaneously parallel shocks, parallel challenges, as I mentioned earlier, the security concern. But so they are also being addressed from different angles to our national action program. We currently have a provincial action program for that. Both the kinetic portion of that and the non-kinetic portion of that, they are simultaneously interacting to ensure that our financing is going in the right direction for ensuring an effective service delivery mechanism to the masses. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bilal Saab. Ma'am, you have the floor, please.
Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for a very substantive day of discussions on a very important topic. This is Bela Jamil from ITA, Idara Talim Agahi, Pakistan. And thank you to all the panelists from the different provinces, and I really thank the panelists from Balochistan for a very detailed review of where we stand on social sectors, especially with the perspective of children and women, girls and women. But one of my concerns is, given the fact what we have is an environment of extreme fiscal constraints, and also to find alternatives, given the complete donor shrinking space, nobody really addressed that issue. And I'm just concerned as to, how are we looking at ways of far more imagination, far more effectiveness of how funds will be spent, given Ms. Rasool's and yourself, sir, your framing of the challenges, and also from SDPI's leadership. We are missing that heart of the conversation. And if we are not going to put that in this budget, where the budget discussions will begin in another week, we've lost the whole year. And we may be already too late. We don't even have a day to miss. We're talking about 2 plane crashes every day. And that's only one little sector. Can you imagine what's happening? So just a bit of, not protest, but a big concern that where is the conversation on these big matters, and we are still saying that we want money from development partners? Well, it won't come. And so if our important areas of children, girls, and women have to wait for that, that's terrible. And so it's a protest from a citizen, somebody who works in evidence and data in this area. And I really would love to see if anyone is thinking even about a budget line which talks about innovative financing and explorations of innovative financing. I will speak to it later, but I'm just concerned because if that budget line is not there, the skill set will not be there to negotiate. And the opportunities are immense, whether it is Sindh or Balochistan or Punjab or Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. But this has to be planned. And we have very little capacity in the line departments delivering this to be able to do that because they're afraid of who will take the liability of innovative finance. So it's the liability discussion which has to be stretched across the departments. And this is a perfect forum to discuss it. But we need people from finance and from planning and from the line departments to be at least talking about it and to ensure that there are some resources for capacity and capability building for such instruments. And it's not that we don't have any. And it's not that we don't have friends who can help us in this. So just that request, sir.
Thank you very much for highlighting such an important component. Ma'am, we have another session that will particularly highlight and debate these points, hopefully. So, proceeding forward, if anyone from the speakers would like to respond, do you have some concrete action regarding the question, concrete reply regarding the question if someone has? Otherwise, we may proceed.
Sir, may I?
Sure, please.
Sir, just updating on the question that we are looking on the innovative financing streams. Sir, for that purpose, we have taken several steps. First of all, we have wanted to have a revenue stream. That's why we have engaged our SRB, Sindh Revenue Board, for getting receipts and revenues at provincial level. And sir, secondly, we are planning to have a CPDU, Climate Planning and Development Unit. For that, we will be accounting and getting some carbon credits. Sir, just like Government of Sindh has taken several steps on climate resilience in energy sector, in housing sector, in biogas sector. So we have a lot of steps that have been taken. And if we will map it and we will register for carbon credits. So, sir, we are on it and we have consulted with our international development partners, just like UNEP and UNDP. And, sir, they have agreed to support us on this initiative. And, sir, besides that, we have started integration of SDGs into our policies. Sir, we have frameworks of 169 laws, and sir, we have integrated our SDGs in around 60 policies. And sir, besides that, we have started digitalization of institutionalization transparency. And sir, for that, we are tracking development investments. And sir, we have grown 33% SDGs reporting capacity. And sir, besides that, we have started a poverty reduction strategy in 2018 that was also approved by cabinet. And sir, based on that strategy, with the support of European Union and Government of Sindh, we have established rural growth centers. And sir, we have that piloted in Chohar Jamali Sujawal, and that is giving us very good results there. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, ma'am. At least there are some hopes, yes. And they have some, especially for the innovative financing. So, Bilal Saab, have you something to say about this question for innovative finance?
Not specifically about innovative financing, rather I would like to address the second portion, rather the first portion of the question made by this our distinguished participant. I would like to add that it is the right time to agree on a major portion of our discussion over here. It's the right time to accept it as a global responsibility rather than a national responsibility or a provincial responsibility. as we are currently seeing a major shift of, I would allow me to use the word diversion. Diversion from this global responsibility with more priority on loans from the donors community rather than financing through technical assistances and accepting the contribution through grants. So this is also a major area of concern for a developing country like Pakistan, and me myself from a backward province. So I have rather a more serious concern on this. So on the one hand, we are trying to finance our areas of concern, but simultaneously we are also adding a huge burden to our economy by accepting the loans for financing those responsibilities, especially in the social sector. So it is the right time to address these issues. Second part of my submission is it is also time, keeping in view the technological advancements, we need more focus on the IT technology, envisioning emerging changes and challenges of AI induction and AI applications in our education system at the grassroots level, especially the primary education. So I recall a most recent discussion in one of the conferences, the chairman HEC and so many distinguished participants from the academia. So there was a point from my side that why are we still adhering to the good old tradition of going for universities of 10,000 canals of land and 5,000 canals of land? Why shouldn't we move from this tradition to a university constructed only in a few canals, just 4 or 5 canals? And I was lucky enough that my point was endorsed by the chairman HEC, that's what I am proposing to all the participants, that it is time to go from this old tradition of brick and mortar to the technological advancements, to these AI tools and things like that. So innovative financing, yes, agreed, I endorse that. This is just one part of what I am suggesting. So we also need to focus on these interventions in our education sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bilal Saab, for your very great insight. I think we should conclude this session. If we don't have any other questions, you have the floor. Please.
Just one comment, sir. Sir, just one comment.
Please.
I think another thing that we need to think about in terms of investing.
Ma'am, introduce yourself, please.
Sorry, my name is Elia. I'm from C4ED. We also work in evaluating in the development sector. We do impact evaluations, and so I think we need to think about how we design interventions. I think we're often not looking at the core reasons of why there are issues. We are often bandaging the issues that we see on the surface. For example, if we see issues, we are often bandaging the issues that, for example, if we see, we're not addressing the main thing, which is like water pollution, and how on an infrastructure and governmental level, creation of infrastructures and waste management and dams and stuff, and because we don't listen to activists in the country, sadly, that we see pollution of waters, and then it creates this necessity that WASH programs are again needed, and then we look for, okay, then how do we get people jobs and stuff, right? But we're not considering what makes it likely for people to get jobs is stability and shelter, right? If you don't have a place to sleep or to shower, you're not likely to get a job. So subsidized housing, but often we're like focusing on, okay, how do we train a certain amount of people, 30 people, 40 people, but we're not looking at what are their economic conditions that are creating these problems in the first place. And then again, with teacher trainings, for example, teacher training programs, we're not looking at issues of minimum wage. We're not looking at the implications of government policies. Another suggestion is that we find other ways than GDP to measure the health of the economy, because in terms of like trickle-down economics, I think it's really not working for Pakistan. We need to see that when even in countries where GDP is really good, there's still a lot of income inequality, right? It shows that businesses are doing good, but it doesn't really reflect on the situation of the people working for those businesses. It doesn't reflect on whether they can afford healthcare. So perhaps we need another scale, which many countries have implied, that reflect the reality of people who are not at the top, right? Another thing is related to the climate fiscal policy. With 2022 floods, we had like $30 billion in loss, and we've not been able to secure like above $1 billion in funding, even though that is a global responsibility, because we don't really contribute that much to the emissions. But I think a lot of climate reparation development programs tend to miss out that part. We try to reduce our emissions, but already we are a developing country and we can't do that much. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your suggestions. Sir, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, sir. I'm Tahir Nawaz. I'm from World Food Program. I do understand the subject of the consultation is to strengthen fiscal policies, inclusive, sustainable development, and we are focusing on children and gender. It's a gender-focused discussion, but just would like to highlight the challenges of food insecurity and poverty within the country, within the lens of both of these topics, whether it is children or whether it is gender, because both of them, unfortunately, they go together, whether it's food insecurity or whether it's poverty. Secondly, on the climate change, as already highlighted and mentioned, I would strongly suggest and propose that we should think for having some kind of a financing mechanism to address these challenges which Pakistan is so used to, and these frequent challenges which are faced by our country. And lastly, on the innovative financing, I would humbly also put it on the floor for discussion that Pakistan is indebted to billions of dollars, and we are all aware of that. And our colleague from KPE has highlighted it. There is a possibility of debt swap. The WFP has done its sort of multiple experiments globally. We did with the Italian debt to the Egyptian government, where that debt was used by the Egyptian government for their own development programs. And then it was repaid in the form of a development within Egypt. So I would humbly suggest that since we have got such a huge debt, I think we need to sort of initiate a direct engagement with bilateral sort of international partners to how to convert this debt swap into a development program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I think we have deliberated at length. Despite there are some key challenges at the provinces level highlighted by our distinguished speakers, yet they have also mentioned that there are some budgets, there are some budget proposals, and there are some allocations to handle, to mitigate, to overcome these issues. So there is some sigh of relief as well. I think the set of components, set of targets under Udan Pakistan also comprises of the tasks, the actions that would be taken, and our commitment towards the sustainable development goals also compels us to address these issues. And I believe that we in Pakistan, we have sustainable development components units at the provincial levels as well. And the inclusive growth is now the agenda of the time, and we are taking it. The provinces have also made a significant initiatives. They have initiatives. So I believe this is the although this is the start, but the time is coming under the Udan Pakistan that we will we will have some significant allocations for these initiatives. And so with this, I thank the distinguished panelists who contributed their valuable insights. And I also thank you, the distinguished guests present here on the podium. And thank you very much, all who have the valuable comments and questions, and all those who have listened patiently. Thank you very much. With this, I close this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Now we turn to session number 2, that is macroeconomic context and fiscal constraint, in which we will be delving upon macroeconomic policies, including tax reform, debt management, and fiscal constraint. So I would request Madam Aisha Bashir from Ministry of Finance to start the discussion. Madam, please.
I can go there. Just see one. I can go there.
आपकी नेम प्लेट लगा
How are you? Oh, hello. You read your time. Exactly. Yes. Yeah, to buy. How are you? Good to see you again. Another panel.
Yes. Ji. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. And first of all, thank you so much for having me and others here for this very useful discussion and the dialogue. But I would like to express my pleasure to be here because Ministry of Finance, Planning and the Planning Commission of Pakistan has been my first home. It was the first place where I started my civil service. So I spent here 4 years, and we have been doing amazing things, and all the people who have been working here, I have a very special connection with them. So it's always a pleasure to be here. So thank you so much. You have put me in a very hot seat in a way that I'm here the very next day when I issue the budget ceiling for the public sector development program or the development budget, which is unfortunately less than 1% of your projected GDP for the next year. So of course I understand, and I really appreciate all the questions and the discussions which we had, like our first sessions. They were very pertinent, and we will try to see if this panel, through this dialogue, we can answer some of those. So before starting the session formally, I would like to request all the panelists to have a round of introduction with all. They don't need although, but still I would like to spare a minute on this. So it's a pleasure to share that we have Dr. Ashfaq Hassan Khan with us. He's member Economic Committee, International Finance Forum, IFF, former Special Secretary Finance. Thank you so much, sir, for being here. It's a pleasure to have you. And then we have Mr. Tobias, lead country economist, program leader, economic policy, finance, poverty, governance, Pakistan, World Bank. And then we have Dr. Ikramul Haq, advocate, Supreme Court, and tax laws expert. Sir, your contribution is going to be very valuable from the tax perspective and the revenue perspective. And then we have Dr. Asim Bashir, public finance expert from the UNICEF. Thank you so much, Asim, for being here. So with this esteemed panel, we would like to start with our today's discussion. Before diving into this, I would like to spend a few minutes establishing the context of the federal government for all these initiatives which we are going to talk about. I had the privilege to design and lead the strategic budgeting initiatives for the first time in the country, because 2-3 years back when I started talking about the strategic budgeting, it was very unique and it was very rarely accepted around. But this is the very main hall where all these needs were arose. And when I joined the planning finance ministry later on, we were able to integrate all these agendas into budgeting. Your questions were very pertinent, and I would just like to summarize all this because I can speak hours on this subject, and I don't want to take the time from the panelists. But for the first time, your federal budget is gender responsive. We have integrated the climate and the gender lens to the federal budget, and we are moving towards other SDGs. We will talk about during the discussion how we have done it and what are the outcomes so far. But before that, I would like to start with Dr. Ashfaq Hassan Khan, and I would like to request him, based on his experience, how does he see all these systems of the budget planning and the formulation evolving over the years, and the role of the academia in sensitizing and generating some advocacy for the integration of the social sector considerations into the budget planning and execution. Sir, over to you.
Thank you very much. I am Dr. Ashfaq Hassan Khan, currently the Director General of the NUST Institute of Policy Studies, National University of Sciences and Technology. This is a very, very familiar place for me because I grew up in this environment as an economist. Planning Commission used to be my parent institution, parent organization, in a sense that I was associated with Pakistan Institute of Development Economics. The Planning Ministry was the administrative arm of the PIDE. Then I moved just behind this building, Ministry of Finance, for 11 years as economic advisor, then Director General Debt Office, and then a Special Secretary Finance. And I was also the spokesperson of the government of Pakistan on economic issues for 11 long years. So this is a very familiar place for me. I could see some renovation has taken place. That's the difference. Okay. You have started with a question about budgeting and policy making in the Ministry of Finance. I will come at the end. Because for 11 years, I have been making the budget. Not 1 or 2, 11 years, long years. So I know how the system works. So I will come at the very end. But let me begin by explaining today's. There are 3 elements of my presentation. This is a very brief presentation, only slide, only some tables, which is very, very essential for everybody here to understand our current challenges. One is the taxation issue. I will not go into, not be explaining much longer because we have an expert here, Dr. Ikram Ul Haq. I will be concentrating on the expenditure part. And the difference between revenue and expenditure is deficit. The larger the deficit, the more we borrow. The more we borrow, the more we rapidly accumulate debt. So I will come to the debt. And then I will give some recommendation because this is the ideal time, right time to give some recommendation because our Deputy Secretary Budget is also sitting here. So let me start with my first point. When we talk about budget deficit, it has 2 components. One is the revenue side, the other is expenditure side. What is the common phrase in such kind of seminar? Tax ko badhao, tax badhao, tax badhao. Ye target, wo target, irrelevant target. Let me emphasize, we give irrelevant target. It has nothing to do with economic activity in Pakistan. It is totally de-linked. When I was in the Ministry of Finance, मैं थोड़ा सा बाइलिंगुअल भी होऊंगा ताकि समझा सकूं. तो मेरे घर में मेरे बच्चे पूछते थे कि आप बहुत देर से आते हैं बजट के जमाने में, मार्च अप्रैल के टाइम पे बहुत देर से आते हैं. मैं जी बजट बन रहा है, बजट. तो बच्चों को समझ नहीं आता था कि बजट बन रहा है, क्या बन रहा है, कोई मशीन है बना रहे हैं, क्या बना रहे हैं ये लोग. फिर मैंने बताया तो नहीं था उनको, ये रोप था कि ज्यादा मुझ पे प्रेशर ना डालो, खासकर बेगम के लिए कि इस वक्त कोई मार्केट पे मुझे ना लेके जाए क्योंकि बजट बन रहा है, मैं बहुत बिजी हूँ. तो ये काम चल जाया करता था. ये मैं आपको रियल लाइफ अपने बता रहा हूँ आपको. बजट मेकिंग, व्हाट इज बजट मेकिंग? ये हवा हमने खड़ा कर करते ना बजट मेकिंग. सबसे पहले एक्सपेंडिचर के 2 कंपोनेंट होते हैं, करंट एक्सपेंडिचर एंड पीएसडीपी, जिसको हम डेवलपमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर कहते हैं. ठीक है. तो सबसे पहले हम क्या करते हैं, पीएसडीपी को फाइनल करते हैं क्योंकि सियासी जोड़ तोड़ वहीं पर होता है. ठीक है. यार इसका प्रोजेक्ट डाल दो, ये इंपॉर्टेंट मिनिस्टर है या इंपॉर्टेंट एमएनए है, इसका ये रेलवे वाला डाल दो, ये वहां पर स्टेशन बनेगा या नहीं बनेगा रेलवे का, ये डाल दो. हर चीज डाल देते. तो बेसिकली बजट मेकिंग एक्सरसाइज इज द फाइनलाइजेशन ऑफ पीएसडीपी. वन लैंग्वेज, एक लफ्ज में, व्हाट इज बजट मेकिंग एक्सरसाइज? फाइनलाइजेशन ऑफ पीएसडी. जिस दिन वो हो गया, we know exactly what will be the current expenditure. 90% is known. क्योंकि इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट क्या होगा हमें पता है. आउटस्टैंडिंग डेट मल्टीप्लाइड बाय द एक्सपेक्टेड इंटरेस्ट रेट, हमें वो मिल गया. डिफेंस क्या होगा? अनरिटर्न, लेस देन 2% या 2% ऑफ जीडीपी. अनरिटर्न है, लिखा हुआ है, यही होगा. तो हमने 2 कंपोनेंट कर लिया. सैलरी ऑफ द फेडरल गवर्नमेंट क्या होगा वो हमें पता है. तो क्या बच गया? सब्सिडीज, किसको क्या देने हैं, किसको क्या नहीं देने. तो ओनली 10% इज, बाकी तो सब ठीक. तो आपने जब पीएसडीपी फाइनल कर दिया और करंट एक्सपेंडिचर आपको पता है, तो क्या क्या बच गया आपके पास में? रेवेन्यू साइड। आपके पास डेफिसिट का टारगेट IMF ने दिया हुआ होता है, सो ओनली अननोन इज द रेवेन्यू साइड, ओनली अननोन इज रेवेन्यू। रेवेन्यू साइड में भी 80 to 85% इज FBR रेवेन्यू। ठीक है, तो क्या होता है कि FBR का रेवेन्यू टारगेट इज ए रेजिडुअल नंबर, इट हैज नथिंग टू डू विद इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटी। अब कहते हैं ना, टैक्सेस इज अ फंक्शन ऑफ लेवल ऑफ इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटी, फ्रॉड, इट इज ए रेजिडुअल नंबर। IMF के साथ निगोशिएशन हो तो क्या क्या क्या, क्या कहते हैं, उन्होंने कहा कि जी 14 ट्रिलियन जो है वो आपका टारगेट होगा। नहीं 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 यार, ये बहुत ज्यादा है, कम करो। तो आप अपने एक्सपेंडिचर साइड से कम करो। कौन से एक्सपेंडिचर कम करेंगे आप? इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट इज कमिटेड। आपको अभी आपको दिखाऊंगा मैं, bulk of expense, your revenue is gone to interest payment. So not saying in very many words that your defense is spending. That's it. This is the budget making exercise. So residual is always and always treated as a residual number. Aapki economic growth is about 6%, 7%. Your FBR tax to GDP ratio is 9 to 10%. If your economy is growing by 2.5%, tax to GDP of FBR is 9 to 10%. So it has nothing to do with your economic activity because it is not derived from economic activity. It is a residual number. आया समझ में आपको? तो अब मैं एक्सपेंडिचर की जब बात करता हूं तो कि जी ऑस्टेरिटी होनी चाहिए हमारे यहाँ पर, एक्सपेंडिचर को कट करो, यही बातें होती है ना। कौन से एक्सपेंडिचर को कट किया जाए? अगर आपको नजर आ रहा हो तो ग्रीन साइड पे कंसिडर करिए, लास्ट 5-6 ईयर्स के नंबर है। अगर आपको आ रहा हो, इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट एज परसेंटेज ऑफ टोटल रेवेन्यू है, ये टोटल रेवेन्यू 2017-18 में ये 29% था। जहां से ग्रीन शुरू होता है 2018-19, तो 29% से जंप करके ये 43% पे चला गया। So 43% of your total revenue is consumed by interest payment. क्या जंप आया? ये जंप क्यों आया ये मैं आपको बताता हूं। उसके बाद 42%, फिर आप देखें 20 और 21 में, और 21 और 22 में ये तकरीबन 40% पे आ गया। इसको नोट करके रखें, सवाल है आपका, ये क्यों हो गया ऐसा? और उसके बाद 22-23 और 23-24 में ये 60% को क्रॉस कर गया। सो मोर देन 60% ऑफ योर टोटल रेवेन्यू, नॉट FBR रेवेन्यू, टोटल रेवेन्यू इज कंज्यूम्ड फॉर इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट। तो ऑस्टेरिटी की जाए, ऑस्टेरिटी किस चीज की ऑस्टेरिटी की जाए? 60% रेवेन्यू तो कमिटेड एक्सपेंडिचर है, वो हमने इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट करना ही करना। ठीक है, अब आते हैं जरा टैक्स रेवेन्यू की तरफ में। टोटल रेवेन्यू में तो नॉन टैक्स रेवेन्यू भी आ जाता है ना, जरा टैक्स रेवेन्यू की तरफ आ जाते हैं। 2017-18 में इट वाज 34%, इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट वाज 34% ऑफ टैक्स रेवेन्यू, टैक्स नॉट टोटल रेवेन्यू, टैक्स रेवेन्यू। वो बढ़कर 23-24 में 23-24 में 81% हो गया। Your 80% of your revenue, tax revenue, is gone for interest payment. यानी कि FBR ने उस 100 रुपया अगर FBR इकट्ठा कर रहा था तो 95 rupees was given to the commercial bank. वो कमर्शियल बैंक को हम दे देते थे। 95 rupees out of 100 gone to commercial bank, क्योंकि हमने टी बिल के जरिए से इनसे बोरो किया हुआ होता है। तो आप बताएं कि ये क्या बजट बनाएंगे, क्या जेंडर सेंसिटिव बजट बनाएंगे? आप बताएं, पैसे नहीं है जेब में। क्या जी ऑस्टेरिटी होनी चाहिए? किस चीज की ऑस्टेरिटी? मैं सुनता हूँ, टीवी पे भी सुनता हूँ, इस किस्म के सेमिनार में भी सुनता हूँ, ऑस्टेरिटी, कट करो एक्सपेंडिचर। क्या कट कर रहे हैं? वो ऑफिस में जो है वो बहुत ज्यादा हो तो एक बिस्किट आप दे देंगे, एक चाय पिला देंगे, नो बिरयानी, नो पुलाव। ये बजट की कटिंग हो रही है, सही मैडम? ठीक है। नहीं, अभी तो बहुत कुछ करना है, कहना
नहीं, सर हम ये कह रहे हैं कि हम सब बाकियों का भी इनपुट लेते जाते हैं।
नहीं, मुझे मुकम्मल करने देते ताकि फिर मुझे बात बोलने की जरूरत ना पड़े। यहां पर यह दिखाना था इस स्लाइड में बस कि योर बल्क ऑफ योर एक्सपेंडिचर इज कंज्यूम्ड बाय इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट। तो जब हम कहते हैं कि एक्सपेंडिचर को कट करो तो बाबा इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट को कट करो। हाउ कैन यू कट योर इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट? स्टेट बैंक से कहो, जिसने एक चाइनीज वॉल खड़ी कर दी है, मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ फाइनेंस और स्टेट बैंक पे चाइनीज वॉल है, जिसको हम कहते हैं स्टेट बैंक एक्ट 2021। प्रॉब्लम वहां पर है स्टेट बैंक में 22% इंटरेस्ट रेट पे रखा है, स्काईरॉकेटेड दिस इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट। सब पैसा मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ फाइनेंस का बजट का तबाह हो गया बिकॉज ऑफ द wrong policy of the State Bank of Pakistan. Let me emphasize, wrong policy of the State Bank of Pakistan. The sources of inflation is supply side. आलू की कीमत बढ़ गई, गंदम की कीमत बढ़ गई, बाहर में तेल महंगा हो गया, हम इंपोर्ट करते हैं, तेल महंगा हो गया। क्या इंटरेस्ट रेट को बढ़ाने से हम इंटरनेशनल मार्केट में तेल की प्राइस को कम कर सकते हैं? क्या इंटरेस्ट रेट को बढ़ा दे तो गंदम की कीमत कम हो जाएगी? क्या इंटरेस्ट रेट को बढ़ा दे तो आलू की कीमत कम होगी पाकिस्तान में? जो इंस्ट्रूमेंट बना ही नहीं है उस पर्पस के लिए कि when the sources of inflation is supply side and if you raise inflation it is bound to create stagflation. इकोनॉमिक थ्योरी अगर ग्राफ होता मैं यहां आपके सामने बना के दिखा देता हूं। Stagflation is the natural outcome. Stagflation means high inflation rate, low growth. And this is the phenomena in which we are in for quite some time. Next. Oh, sorry. ये शॉर्ट जो भी मैंने आपको एक्सप्लेन किया है, इसको देख लें। ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, समझने के लिए है। ये क्या चीज बता रहा है? इंक्रीज इन एक्सपेंडिचर। कौन सा आइटम कल्परेट है? वो कौन सा कंपोनेंट ऑफ एक्सपेंडिचर है जो सबसे ज्यादा कंट्रीब्यूट कर रहा है इन द राइज ऑफ एक्सपेंडिचर? क्या नजर आ रहा है आपको? स्टार कहां पर नजर आ रहा है आपको 2022-23 में? 88% contribution to increase in expenditure came from interest payment. 88%. So who is the main culprit? Interest payment. Who is the main culprit? State Bank of Pakistan. कभी आपने बोला है कभी टीवी पे बैठ के एक्सपेंडिचर को कट करो? भाई कट करो ना एक्सपेंडिचर। जेंडर बजटिंग होनी चाहिए। जेब में पैसे नहीं, जेंडर बजटिंग होनी चाहिए। खा गया स्टेट इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट, सब पैसा आता है। 88% कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन कमिंग अलोन फ्रॉम इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट। किधर से? डिफेंस का क्या कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन था? अगर आप एवरेज ले लें 5 साल का, 48% contribution coming from interest payment, only 8% contribution coming from defense. Development negative है आपका, 2.3% negative contribution. So we are paying interest payment out of our development budget. और PSDP आप डालें उसमें, और प्रोजेक्ट डाल दो यार। यही बिल्डिंग डालता रहता है प्रोजेक्ट। 1200 से ज्यादा प्रोजेक्ट चल रहे हैं। 10 से 11,000 बिलियन का ऑलरेडी प्रोजेक्ट चल रहा है। थ्रो फॉरवर्ड इज 11 ट्रिलियन रुपीज। 12-14 साल अगर हम PSDP में कोई नया ना डालें तो ये काफी है हमारे इसको मुकम्मल कर। 12 से 14 साल के लिए, लेकिन डाले जाओ। फिर कहते हैं कि जी वो कट गया, ये इंटरेस्ट डेवलपमेंट बजट कट कर गया, कोई जनरल बजटिंग नहीं हो रही है। ऐसे नहीं है तो कहां से होगी? नेक्स्ट, look at the growth in the last 5 years. Interest payment has grown at an average rate of 35% per annum. Revenue कितना बढ़ा? 18% per annum. So twice the speed at which the revenue was increasing, ये interest payment बढ़ रहा था. आप कभी इस रेस में लग सकती हैं? कभी FBR इस रेस में चल सकता है कि 34% पर एनम अपने रेवेन्यू को बढ़ाए? सफोकेट हो जाएगी इकोनॉमी आपकी। ठीक है, हम लगे में टैक्स ब्रॉटिंग की जाए, ये किया जाए, ठीक है वो भी करें आप। यू कैन नॉट बीट द इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट, विच इज द मेन कल्प्रिट? पता चला आपको? इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट। हु इज रिस्पॉन्सिबल? irrelevant policy, monetary policy of the country. ठीक है, आप में से बहुत सारे ने इकोनॉमिक्स पढ़ी है। डेट सस्टेनेबिलिटी कंडीशंस है, और वो कंडीशन ये है कि जो रियल जीडीपी शुड बी ग्रेटर देन योर रियल इंटरेस्ट रेट। Your real GDP growth should be greater than your real interest rate. Nominal interest rate adjusted for inflation. ठीक है? What is your real interest rate today? इकराम साहब, क्या है इंटरेस्ट रेट रियल? रियल इंटरेस्ट रेट आजकल क्या है? 10%. 10% is your real interest rate, and what is the GDP growth? Less than 3%. Is it a sign of instability or stability? Economics 101 पढ़ाना पड़ेगा स्टेट बैंक में जाकर। ये है वो कल्प्रिट जिसने इतने लंबे मुद्दत तक, for a longer period of time, we kept interest rates so high, it totally damaged and destroyed Pakistan. चार्ज इन पे आता है, ओ जेंडर सेंसिटिव बजटिंग नहीं हो रही है, डेवलपमेंट प्रोजेक्ट्स नहीं आ रहे हैं हमारे। भाई कहां से आएंगे यार? बोरो करके लाओगे, डेट बढ़ेगा। नेक्स्ट, सॉरी कर लेते। दिस बेसिकली ये है वो ग्रीन जो है, दिस इज द ग्रोथ रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट इन द लास्ट 5 years, एंड these are the same thing as I have discussed. ये सॉरी, ये जो है यार वहीं से अगर हैंडल कर लो तो ज्यादा बेहतर होगा। ये हाँ, यहां पर, यहां से आप खुद ही वहां से हैंडल करें। नेक्स्ट, हाँ यहां रोक दे। ये एक सीरीज है आपको, ये कभी आपको किसी जगह पे आपको 1947-48 से आपको डेट का नंबर नहीं मिलेगा। Courtesy to the Director General Debt Office, when I was the Director General Debt Office, ये हमने बनाया था मिनिस्ट्री में। So last year our debt was $130 billion, और पब्लिक डेट जो है हमारा, आप देखें कि पब्लिक डेट 2006-07 में ये था 4.8 ट्रिलियन। 2006-2007 में इट वाज समवेयर है, ये आपको मिल जाएगा, 4.8 ट्रिलियन था 6-7। लेस देन 20 years में वो 4.8 ट्रिलियन से बढ़कर तकरीबन 75 ट्रिलियन पे आ गया। 4.8 यानी 5 ट्रिलियन टू 75 ट्रिलियन इन लेस देन 20 years. ये स्पीड हमने कैसे पकड़ा? नेक्स्ट, ये देखें जरा, ये इंक्रीज आपको बता रहा है, इंक्रीज इन पब्लिक डेट, जो सेकंड कॉलम है आपके राइट हैंड साइड पे। आप ये देखें कि 2018-19 में कितना डेट बढ़ा, 8.8 ट्रिलियन का। एक साल में ये इंक्रीज था 2017-18 वर्सेस 18-19. So in 1 year your public debt increased almost 9 trillion. जबकि total outstanding stock in 2006-2007 was 5 trillion. ये 60 साल का accumulation था 5 trillion, और ये एक साल में 9 trillion. आया समझ में? 60 साल में कितना accumulate किया हमने? 5 trillion. एक साल में कितना accumulate किया? 9 trillion. यार ये रफ्तार, ये तरक्की हम किसी और जगह दिखाते तो माशाअल्लाह पाकिस्तान कहां से कहां पहुंचा हुआ। उसके बाद देखें आप 2021 में 3 ट्रिलियन कम हो गया। किसी ने सोचा कि ये इंटरेस्ट जो है कैसे कम हो गया? इसलिए कि थैंक्स टू पेंडेमिक, जब पेंडेमिक आया तो इंटरेस्ट रेट एनवायरमेंट नीचे की तरफ आ गया। ये 6-7% पे इंटरेस्ट रेट आ गया, 7% पे। उसने हमें बचाया। ये अल्लाह के जो एक तरीके से अजाब था, उसमें भी अपॉर्चुनिटी हमारे लिए निकल आए कि हमारा इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट कम हो गया, हमारा बजट थोड़ा सा बेहतर हो गया। तो हमने बेनिफिट हासिल किया है आपके पेंडेमिक से, बहुत बेनिफिट हासिल किया हमने पेंडेमिक से, जिसमें मैं जाना नहीं चाहता हूं। ऑयल का बिल आपका गिर गया, आपका इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट गिर गया, ठीक है। उसके बाद देखें 22-23 में कितना इंक्रीज हुआ, तकरीबन 14.5 ट्रिलियन का एक साल में डेट के जो इंक्रीज है। दिस शोज आवर फिस्कल प्रोफिलिगेसी, हाउ प्रोफिलिगेट वी आर। वी लव टू स्पेंड मनी बट वी हेट टू कलेक्ट टैक्सेस। ये हमारा नेशनल नारा है। वी हेट टू कलेक्ट टैक्सेस बट वी लव टू स्पेंड मनी। नेक्स्ट, चलें इसको भी आगे छोड़ दें, आगे बढ़ जाए, आगे बढ़ जाए। ये आपको ये दिखा रहा है कि हम किस तरीके से हमारी डेट की जो एक्सटर्नल डेट में एडिशन किस तरीके से हुआ है। डिकेड ऑफ 90s 10 years में we added $17.4 billion of debt, and Ishrat Hussain in one of his book has described this as a lost decade for Pakistan. Decade of 90s को $17.4 billion debt added. उसके बाद जो सेकंड लॉस्ट डेकेड, जिसको I say 2008 to 18 was yet another lost decade for Pakistan. We added $49 billion of debt, external debt. तो इन दो लॉस्ट डेकेड को ऐड कर दें, $66 billion out of 130, $66 billion has been added in these two lost decades. ये मैं नहीं कहूंगा, सियासी हो जाएगा कि इस 2 डिकेड में किसने हुक्मरानी की पाकिस्तान में, वो इससे हट गया है। नेक्स्ट
सर, माय अपॉलॉजीज, मुझे ऑर्गेनाइजर्स की तरफ से कहा जा रहा है कि टाइम शायद अगले सेशन का भी है, सो वी हैव
मैं कुछ रिकमेंडेशन दे दूं, आगे चल जाओ यार, बस रिकमेंडेशन तो दे दो। आगे आगे आगे, हाँ यहाँ रुक जाओ। सबसे पहले आई हैव पॉइंटेड आउट इंटरेस्ट रेट इज द रूट कॉज ऑफ आवर डिस्ट्रक्शन ऑफ पाकिस्तान बजट। ये फ्रेमवर्क है मेरा, एंड जून में कहां पर होना चाहिए, एंड जून 26 में कहां होना चाहिए, एंड दिसंबर 26 में क्या होना चाहिए। 1% increase in interest rate by State Bank of Pakistan adds to her budget by over 300 billion interest payment. 1% स्टेट बैंक बढ़ाता है, 300 बिलियन से ज्यादा इनका इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट बढ़ जाता है। तो इसी तरीके से 1% अगर कम करता है तो आपको इतनी सेविंग होगी। इस साल माशाल्लाह बहुत सेविंग होगी क्योंकि इंटरेस्ट रेट कम हुआ है। नेक्स्ट, इसमें जो है मेरी सजेशन है कि आप पब्लिक सेक्टर डेवलपमेंट प्रोग्राम को फॉर एटलीस्ट 2 ईयर्स के लिए फ्रीज कर दें, पिछले जो सतह पे था वहीं पर रखें, नो इंक्रीज इन पब्लिक सेक्टर डेवलपमेंट प्रोग्राम। ये आपके लिए है मैडम। allocate resources to the ongoing strategic nature project, one recommendation. दूसरा यह है कि there are about 12,000 ongoing projects with throw forward amounting to almost 11 trillion rupees. ये थ्रो फॉरवर्ड है। इसका मतलब यह है कि 12 से 14 साल तक PSDP जो है अगर हम ना भी रखें तो ये इसको फाइनेंस करने में हमारा 12 से 14 साल लग जाएगा। तो मेरी सजेशन ये है कि एक कमेटी बनाए, मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ फाइनेंस एंड प्लानिंग कमीशन, और इसको रिव्यू करे इस ऑन गोइंग प्रोजेक्ट को। जिस प्रोजेक्ट पे 15% तक अगर हमने पैसे एलोकेट कर दिए हैं, निकाल दें उसको प्रोजेक्ट से, कंसीडर दिस एज संक कॉस्ट। और जो प्रोजेक्ट 80 to 85% एलोकेशन हो चुका है, ये उसको ज्यादा पैसे दें ताकि वो जल्दी मुकम्मल हो सके, टाइम लैप्स ना हो सके। ठीक है, ये एक सजेशन है कि एक कमेटी बना दी जाए। माजी में भी कमेटी बनी है ये। रेवेन्यू साइड पे ऐसी ब्रीफली मैं बता देता हूँ, वो ज्यादा वो हमारे अकरम साहब बोलेंगे। एक तो ये हमने पॉइंट ऑफ सेल POS का सिस्टम FBR ने शुरू किया था। दिस इज ए वेरी गुड। उसको वो किया गया, ब्लंट किया गया, अंदर से लोगों ने ब्लंट किया उसको, FBR के अंदर से लोगों ने। तो उसको दोबारा अग्रेसिव तरीके से पॉइंट ऑफ सेल को आप करें ताकि डॉक्यूमेंटेशन हो सके। दूसरा ये है कि बहुत सारे आप देखेंगे आजकल CDA जो है एक छापा मार मुहिम पे है कि जहां जहां पर खोटे लगे हुए हैं उसको हटा रहे हैं। भाई उनको रोजगार लगा हुआ है लोगों का, वहां पर हजारों हजार लोग वहां उससे रोजी कमा रहे हैं, उसको आपने अप्रूव कर दिया है। बेहतरीन तरीका है, आप उनको कहो कि यहाँ खोके बना लो और तुम टैक्स दो इतना। दे आर विलिंग टू पे। मैंने बातचीत की उन खोके वालों से, दे आर विलिंग टू पे 20,000 रुपीज, 25,000 रुपया सालाना, जो भी है, जिस तरीके से भी आप मुनासिब समझते हैं कि दे दें उसको। वो अपना एक लाइसेंस जो है, जैसे बाहर के मुल्कों में भी देखा, एक वो लाइसेंस जो है वो लटका देता है कि ये रजिस्टर्ड है, टैक्स पेयर है, वो अपना बिजनेस कर रहा है। बजाय इसको अप्रूव करें, आप अर्न करें पैसे वहां उससे। तो ये एक सजेशन है, छोटी छोटी चीजें हैं। मैं यहाँ पर अब रुक जाता हूँ। थैंक यू वेरी मच फॉर योर पेशेंस।
Thank you so much, sir, for all this valuable contribution to the session, which has really set the context why we are here and why we are talking about all these issues. But I will, with all due respect, I would like to mention that that's the main reason, the glaring issue you highlighted about the macro fiscal considerations, that we need these strategic budgeting initiatives, which are misunderstood by the way that it is about spending more. It is about spending effectively. That's the whole point about all these initiatives, right? So with this, I would like to, move on with this conversation, and I would like to, invite other panelists to join the discussion. So my next panelist I would like to invite is Mr. Tobias, and I would like to ask you that based on all our initial conversation, where your tax to GDP ratio is 10%, your interest payments are nearly 8% of your GDP, and then we have our development budgeting, development portfolio, which is less than 1% of your GDP, right? So considering all this situation and considering the importance of having all these social considerations like the child budgeting, nutrition sensitive budgeting in public expenditures, and based on your experience,
How do you see what sort of measures can be helpful for the developing countries like Pakistan in terms of debt restructuring, in terms of tax reforms and other reforms in the fiscal side? If you could just elaborate quickly, because we have a very positive time here.
Yes, of course. Let me try to be very fast. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Look, I think it's probably worth saying just at the outset that I think that Pakistan's macroeconomic policies have served the country quite well over the past 18 months. I think what we've seen is inflation fall from 40% now down to single digits. That's allowed the policy rate to fall back to around 11%. So we have a real interest rate of around 2%. We're well on track to bringing the debt servicing costs down as the policy rate has fallen. And that's exactly where Pakistan should be. That has allowed us to control the money supply. It is bringing the macroeconomic stability considerations under control so that we can focus again on development and we can focus on the progressivity and usefulness of public spending. But I think this adjustment was very much needed. And I don't want to kind of understate the difficulty that has caused. But if you look at the textbook, Pakistan's central bank has done exactly what it should have done. And I think we are seeing the results of that in inflation now at very manageable levels. Within that framework, I mean, what do we want to see from fiscal policy? I think an ideal fiscal policy would see a reduction in poverty and a reduction in inequality. We've done a lot of empirical analysis recently, and that is not really, frankly speaking, what we see from Pakistan's fiscal system. As you would expect, a large number of households are contributors to the fiscal system, so net taxpayers. So if you take what households receive versus what they pay, the issue in Pakistan is that it's only really the very bottom 10% that are net receivers from the fiscal system. So only the bottom 10% of households receive more than they pay. Now, if you've got a poverty rate of 40%, that means that 30% of people in Pakistan are poor and they are paying more into the fiscal system in taxes than they are receiving from the fiscal system. So what that means is that the fiscal system overall is contributing to poverty. So we see the fiscal system overall contributing, we estimate, around 2 percentage points to the poverty rate. Part of the reason for that is the impacts on inequality. So while on average, across lower middle income countries, a fiscal system would reduce inequality using the Gini coefficient, it would reduce poverty by around 6%. In Pakistan, that number is basically negligible. There is no significant reduction in inequality from the fiscal system. So we have a fiscal system that is not really helping us redistribute resources progressively. And that's unusual. It's very unusual internationally for a fiscal system not to be serving that redistributive objective. So why is that? I think that obviously development spending is part of this. The use of gender tagging, the use of geographical tagging in budget systems. But I think there are some much more fundamental problems that we have to address as well. So let's think about it. Social spending, so social transfers through the BISP system, very progressive, targeted very well towards the poorest households, 0.5% of GDP. You compare that with 1.5% of GDP being paid on state-owned enterprise subsidies. So we're 3 times as much going on state-owned enterprise subsidies. 6%, as Dr. Khan has pointed out, plus on interest payments. So there's that core allocative efficiency question and what money is being spent on. If we drill down again and we look at social sector spending, we are spending significant amounts on electricity subsidies. Well, only 70% of the poorest decile even have an electricity connection. So we're inevitably missing the poorest people when we subsidize electricity. We have large gas circular debt now, and that's imposing large fiscal costs. Around circular debt and gas sector costs are sitting around 4 or 5% of GDP. Only 15% of people in the bottom decile have a gas connection. So we are subsidizing services that the poor disproportionately are excluded from. Another example, spending on tertiary education, which is disproportionately utilized by higher income groups. Per pupil, we spend 17.5 times more per tertiary student than we do on primary students. So we're allocating resources in ways that benefit those higher in the income distribution. So that's, I think, some of the core issues on the expenditure side, but the tax system is also equally important to these discussions. I think we all know the difference between direct taxes and indirect taxes and the importance of raising direct taxes. If we use direct taxes, such as personal income tax and corporate income tax, we can have a progressive tax system where those at the top of the distribution pay more. That's the beauty of a direct tax system. That's why you want more taxes to be collected through your direct tax system, because you can make sure that the top end of the income distribution pays more tax. The average lower middle income country collects about 40% of its revenue, tax revenue, from direct taxes. In Pakistan, that amount is half that, 20%. So we don't use direct taxes to the extent that we should, and because of that, we missed progressivity. Overall, households are spending about 8% of their income on tax, and that is roughly the same amount across the entire income distribution. So it doesn't matter if you're poor or if you're rich, around 8% of your income is going to taxes. So the progressive elements of the tax system is nowhere near as pronounced as it should be and as it is in other countries at Pakistan's level of income. So let me very quickly focus on the recommendation. I mean, what do we think can be done? I think the first thing to say is government is already doing many of the right things. We've been working very hard over recent years to reduce subsidy spending on electricity, progress underway to reduce subsidy spending on the gas, really big efforts underway on the tax system to expand the tax base, taxation of agricultural income, taxation of property, treating all income as income that should be subject to progressive taxation. These are really key steps, and I think government is making really important moves. I think the next step really is to take forwards the reforms in subsidy spending. Around 65% of households still receive electricity subsidies in some form. We are advocating, and I think government is moving towards targeting electricity subsidies much more based on household welfare, based on whether you're poor or not, rather than based on how much electricity you consume. And that would save fiscal resources and make sure that the subsidy was benefiting those at the bottom of the distribution. We think there's a lot that could be done to reduce state-owned enterprise subsidy as well. So just basically being more careful about who gets a subsidy under what conditions, making sure that lending to state-owned enterprises can be repaid, making sure that the guarantees are based on a proper assessment of their capacity to repay and their capacity to take credit. We think there needs to be a major reorientation in public spending within the social sectors, prioritizing primary healthcare, primary education, moving resources much more towards those in most need, and the basic public good functions that the government must provide. And then I think most critically on the tax system, I think these efforts to expand the tax net, making sure that we are mobilizing these new income sources in agriculture, property, reducing reliance on indirect taxation, especially withholding on withholding regime and withholding on non-income transactions. So the withholding on electricity bills, the withholding on basic household utilities, everybody has to pay that. And so what should be a direct tax actually becomes an indirect tax that is a burden on the entire income distribution. So I think Overall, I think we've seen real progress. I think government is moving in the right direction in terms of reorienting spending away from subsidies towards basic public goods and moving the tax system away from a very narrow tax base with limited progressivity to a much broader tax base and trying to increase progressivity and use of direct taxation. None of which is to say that the reforms on the development budget, as Dr. Khan has already pointed out, are really important. A thorough review of the PSDP, economic analysis, building proper public investment management processes, including gender sensitivity, climate sensitivity, into the project planning process, the project evaluation process, and making sure that the full project cycle is well attuned to social needs. Let me stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tobias, for such a wonderful conversation for this session. And I completely agree with whatever you have said. I would just like to, summarizing what your recommendations, they are absolutely online, as you suggested and you recommended. And I would just like to tell you that when we did this climate responsive budgeting and gender responsive budgeting, the climate and gender has been integrated to all PFM tools. So I had this privilege to design a framework and action plan around it to integrate your climate responsiveness, your gender responsiveness, starting from your strategic budgeting towards your budget planning phase, and then budget tagging side, and then producing the reporting and monitoring it. So we have done it. And the one more thing, recently we developed and designed the framework to capture the green component in subsidies as well. So we are moving towards more, rational-based subsidized systems. So thank you so much. That makes me to come towards revenue side, because gender budgeting, SDGs budgeting, children budgeting, nutrition budgeting, or the well-being budgeting, it is comprised of two components. One is the expenditure parts, the other part is the revenues. So we already covered the expenditure part for the federal government of Pakistan. That's a prayer to announce. We can talk about this later whenever you have a time for this. But it's a time for the federal government to move towards the revenue side. So I also had this privilege to design the first framework to capture the green component in revenues, which is available on the website of the Ministry of Finance. And when why we started it, because whenever a question is posed to me, why gender budgeting, why children budgeting, why nutrition budgeting, or the well-being budgeting, my answer was for fiscal justice. That brings me to our other panelist, which is Mr. Ikram, who is well versed in the legal system, and being a tax law expert, I would like to ask you how the existing tax laws and the tax regime at the moment is responsive to cater the needs of different vulnerable groups, including the children, including women, including other, vulnerable groups. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Time is very short now, but I really wanted to talk for 10-15 minutes from my heart that incidence of tax in Pakistan is on the poor and less privileged. When we are talking all this, let me tell you that we have tax expenditure of 4 trillion. It was 2023. So when we are talking about so much taxes and then asking that we should impose more taxes, and at the moment, Pakistan is perhaps like Scandinavian as far as taxation is concerned. Now taxation is over 50%. But on the other hand, what we are getting in lieu of taxes is nothing. And as mentioned, all our revenues are going mostly towards debt servicing. In this scenario, I will just mention 3 things: that how this tax system is oppressive, anti-business, and anti-people. One, that you have shifted about 98% of tax collection to withholding agent. FBR at its own is collecting last year figure. I have put up the data and all my research is on that they have only collected 2% by their own efforts, by some audit creating demand and then recovering that. But they have put the people into such a long drawn legal battles that they have less number of taxpayers than the cases they file against taxpayers. This is very strange that a tax administration is filing so much cases against taxpayers that ultimately Our courts take about 25 years from the first assessment to the final settlement in Supreme Court. It's very strange that it takes about 25 years for a tax dispute to be settled in Pakistan. So who's bearing the cost of taxation in Pakistan? When I say this 4 trillion tax exemptions are available, if you go to any website, because since 2019 under Public Management Act, it was mandatory for Federal Board of Revenue to present with the finance bill the expenditure report. Nobody looks at that expenditure report. You are giving 4 trillion exemptions to whom and what for? If you take even half of that away, your tax collection will be much better. So the issue is not imposing more and high rate taxes. The issue is to plug gaps where we have created intentionally for the benefit of the rich and the mighty. So this big part of this tax exemption is for colonial style ruling elite for their perks and purposes, their big houses and recurring cost to that. Nobody talks about that. So my recommendation only, and I will stop here because I will not talk too much. You can always see my published work that in this budget, at least we should recommend that they should remove 50% tax expenditure, which is only available to the rich and mighty. I'm not saying to the poor people, and that will create some fiscal space to spend on social services. Thank you very much.
So much, Ikram sir, for being quick and very precise about it. Thank you so much. So there is another important aspect when it comes to public spending upon all these important issues. So the role of the parliamentarian is very important, and the policymaker is very important. That was the one of the component under my framework as well. And now we have started taking this to the parliamentarians and the provincial governments as well. And I heard Madam Nafisa Shah might be joining for the third session. So when we were presenting her what we have done at the federal government level, she was quite surprised. And the whole Women Caucus was very surprised that all of these initiatives have been taken and they were not even aware of the situation. So generating this advocacy and making their role more critical in this whole policy process is very important. So how do you see the role of all these prime institutions and the policymakers and the parliamentarians in addressing the needs of children specifically? Because we talk a lot about that 40% of the children under the age of 5 are suffering from stunting. And there was a sort of a nutrition emergency at the Prime Minister office level. Yeah. So how do you see it making this role more effective and more productive in all this scenario? Thank you. Sir.
Thank you for inviting and thank you for posing this very interesting and pertinent question. So before I formally come on to the question and addressing the role of the institution, parliamentarians and the lawmakers and the budgetary process itself, first, I would like to connect the debate from the dots that I have from the earlier participants. The tax justice, the entire debate of tax justice and fiscal constraint. If we see in a framework, so tax justice is all about 4 different things. What kind of execution of tax policy first, to whom the incidence of taxation is high and to whom is getting the disproportionate amount of tax expenditure or the benefits, number 1. Second, the tax devolution system itself, the tax distribution system, whether it is performance based, whether it's incentivize the performance, whether it's incentivizing the performance on social sector investment or not. And second, the spending of taxpayers' money itself. If 100 rupee is invested by some philanthropist, you see great degree of transparency, credibility, and you see very high, disproportionately very high degree of people's trust on the philanthropist organization. Because people see the result, they are able to witness the result by themselves. However, if the same 100 rupees being spent by the public sector, by the government, be it provincial, be it federal, we see low degree of transparency and credibility, number 1. Number 2, we do not witness any kind of people trust in the government. It is kind of, public sector, it represents public sector failure at large. And then impact of public sector itself. So to show the impact of public sector and the governance and the use of the taxpayers' money, I gave you certain facts and figures. Pakistan's Human Development Index ranking is 163 out of 164 out of 193 countries in the world. And the same ranking was back in 2008 for 145. Pakistan stands a medium income country during 2008. And now Pakistan is a low human development country, and Pakistan comes under bottom 30 countries according to the per capita income, bottom 20 to 30 countries, and it varies year to year. So Pakistan's human development ranking is declining over the time, and it's declining continuously over time. Number one, Pakistan's per capita income is amongst the lowest in the region and compared to the peer income countries. However, Pakistan's tax rates, be it sales tax on services, sales tax on goods, be it income tax, corporate tax, they are as high as of EU countries, they are as high as of OECD countries. So when you household income is reduced by the direct taxes, so the disposable income is reduced. Once our disposable income, it is amongst the lowest in the region, it is among lowest in the world. So out of that, we have to bear burden of taxes, which is so massive, as high as 18%, as high as the tax rates on telecom services in Pakistan is highest in the world. Is highest in the world. Its sales tax on services 19.5%. Once it is added to the base of 100, then for that 119.5, a withholding advance income tax of 15% is added. So crudely, it's 34.5% of tax. It is highest in the world, and everybody is bearing at the cost. So the incidence of taxation is quite regressive. Although that we do have a direct income tax system, we do have a progressive income tax system, but the entire taxation system, as Ikram Sahab also mentioned, is based on withholding tax agents, and the regime is actually over reliant on having a taxation system which is based on transaction incidence, not based on tracking the actual inventory of income or the actual income. So this is one of the major problems. Our tax expenditure, when the new tax law was instituted, legislated, the tax income ordinance 2001. So back in 2003, we have tax expenditure of 0.3% of GDP. And now our tax expenditure is 3.7% of GDP in 2024. So we did run some simulation. If we were to reduce our tax expenditure just by 20%, not by 50, just by 20%, we'll be able to double our social protection spending just in one single year. So our social protection spending stands, federal social protection spending stands just 0.6% of GDP, out of which 0.3% of GDP is alone one single largest program, which is BISP. And our cumulative social protection spending of all 4 provinces, it amounts to only 0.1% of GDP. So total social protection spending of the country, federal cum provincial, it's 0.7% of GDP. So if we were to cut our tax expenditure just by 20%, just by 1/5, we'll be able to double it in the next year. Number one. And the second point, which was about tax distribution, the entire tax distribution, since we know that the taxation powers constitutionally and de facto the taxation powers rest with the federal government, then there is a distribution mechanism under Article 160 of the Constitution, which distributes to the provinces based on a formula. And that, I appreciate the formula is multi-factored, but that is that has given an overriding consideration to population, and that entire formula is non-performance based. The entire formula, population, it's non-performance based indicator, and then we have poverty. You are poor, okay, you get 10.3%, population 82%, and then revenue collection, it's 5%, and then area, it's 2.7%. So entire formula is non-performance based. It's incentivizing something which has nothing to do with the performance itself. So rather, we should seriously think of revising this tax distribution, incentivizing somebody who's doing good in terms of its real effort, in terms of improving human development condition, in terms of reducing population growth rate. So instead of population base itself, it should be demographic performance, reduction in population growth rate, reduction in fertility rates, or it must be based on performance. It should be about, say, reduction in stunting, reduction in wasting. This should be the performance-based criteria that should be added to this. and no country on earth exists which has an overriding consideration to the population as high as 82%. You'll find to the max 50% weightage given to population in some of the countries. In India, it's merely 25%. So in India, there is a larger weightage to demographic performance, and there are a couple of other performance than real tax effort itself. So by virtue of bringing tax distribution justice, we'll be able to incentivize the performance. We'll be able to incentivize, the real performance itself. Now I come on to the governance model, and there are a couple of other challenges for our governance. These are endogenous challenges. The debt is an endogenous challenge of ours, and then we have pile up debt and historical baggage of some non-performance on taxation and historical non-performance of transparency, accountability, and citizens' non-inclusion to our budgetary process. So these are all historical baggages, and these are endogenous to the system. However, we do have certain exogenous factors. Those are very much pertinent and alarming. For instance, the climate change and the threat of climate change itself. So the recent IMF review report, first review report under the extended fund facility, it clearly mentioned that Pakistan has got very low degree of preparedness for adaptive resilience for the future climate change threats, and due to which Pakistan's ability to perform and to create provision of public good, to have a preparedness is compromised, and Pakistan's ability for high human development spending is compromised. So from 1950 to 2024, just on account of floods, Pakistan's losses accumulates to 54 billion US dollars. And for the same period, the US aid that flowed to Pakistan amounted to 47 billion US dollars. Now you can compare how much Pakistan lost just on account of floods. So the recent flood, we see catastrophic losses of human lives and GDP, etc. So this is one of the very important areas that we should focus on. We should focus not only on what we are talking here about, whatever is left over by after subtracting our non-discretionary expenditure, for which we cannot exercise any kind of discretion. Whatever is left over should be spent with greater degree of transparency, with greater degree of inclusion. There is no proper mechanism, be it at federal level, be it at provincial level, district level. There are no such forums that citizens itself, they are participating in the budgetary making process. There are no such disclosures in our budget that any citizen can access the book and then I can just draw information about my area and what kind of interventions are there. You don't find any information on KPIs of the budget. You don't find information of output and outcome. And they are actually, there is a concept of called green book. They're putting the same information post facto. First budget is prepared, then they provide some kind of KPI in terms of post facto. Although the idea is functional performance based medium term budgetary framework, where we first evaluate the performance and then the next year allocation is determined based on the score of last year. However, this is not the case in Pakistan. So I would like to, end my submissions here, and you're more than welcome for any question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, very quickly, we will go for question answer session. Floor is open for question answer, please. Yes.
Thank you, Madam, for this insightful discussion about current fiscal structure of Pakistan economy. My question is related to fiscal insight of Dr. Ishfaq. Sir, I remember your statement 5-6 years back that demand management policy under IMF titulate push the economy to stagflation, shaping economy ugly. Are you think that fiscal deterioration and fiscal turmoil that we are facing, how much IMF program is responsible? And secondly, the government claim for V-shaped recovery. In first session, one of our honorable members claimed that GDP expansion to 4 and 11 billion, inflation control, exchange rate stability. Are you think that government is true in her claim that we are in V-shaped recovery? In third, sir, currently we are in IMF program. In the measures that you suggested, for this fiscal management is from expenditure side. Are you think how much these measures are feasible as we are currently running and designing our fiscal policy under the tutelage of IMF? Thank you.
मुझे और जलील कराना चाहते हैं आप? एक लफ्ज हमेशा याद रखें, जितने लोग यहाँ बैठे हुए हैं, तब जब भी कोई मुल्क IMF के प्रोग्राम में जाता है वो पॉलिसी नहीं बनाता है। क्लियर हो गया? फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर को गालियां दे रहे होते हैं। अभी मैंने स्टेट बैंक को कितना बुरा भला कहा। वो मासूम लोग हैं, वो नहीं बनाते पॉलिसीज। आपने अपने वजीर आज़म के बहुत सारे स्टेटमेंट नहीं सुने कि उन्होंने नाक रगड़ा दिया हमारा। हमने सैलरीड वालों को टैक्स में कोई कंसेशन देना है, पहले पूछेंगे वहां से इजाजत मिलेगी तो देंगे। तो वी लूज आवर फाइनेंशियल सॉवरेनिटी। एक चीज हमेशा ध्यान में रख लें इस चीज को, ठीक है? अब होता है कि वी आर ऑल इम्प्लीमेंटर। आई वॉज द इम्प्लीमेंटर फॉर 11 years। 4 साल जो थे जिसमें when we were not under the IMF program, we were making the policy on our own, 2004 to 2008। बाकी जो पीरियड था when we are under the program, we follow what is coming from the IMF because they are giving us money। ठीक है? So they want to ensure कि उनका पैसा आप उनको वापस करने के काबिल हो। Very simple। Every commercial bank would do the same thing। They will ensure that when you borrow, you are able to repay those amounts। तो वो अपने हिसाब से वाशिंगटन में बैठ के जो भी आप उनको वो समझते हैं बेहतर है वो आपको देते हैं बनाने के लिए। आपने कहा कि फिस्कल पॉलिसी, यस, because fiscal policy has become subservient to the monetary policy in Pakistan। When your 80% of tax revenue is consumed by interest payment and interest rate decision is taken in central bank, who is responsible then? Our inflation is around 1% today. Should we give credit to the state bank's monetary policy of keeping 22% high interest rate, keeping interest rate? He has given this credit. I would not. Why? Why inflation went up to 35, 38, 40%? Q. What were the factors? Senseless devaluation of the currency. When you devalue currency, by definition, this is inflationary, right? So first, through devaluation, we created inflation. And when inflation was created, then state bank come and then raise the interest rate. Interest rate is the cost of production. When interest cost goes up, the cost of production goes up, it is passed on to the consumer. So there was a co-movement of interest rate and inflation in Pakistan. Go and check Economic Survey of Pakistan. There is a box item on inflation chapter. The government of Pakistan itself acknowledging that interest rate and inflation is moving simultaneously in the same direction. In other words, interest rate was not the right instrument to control inflation at that time. What was the main factor? Devaluation, rise in commodity prices globally, rise in international prices, particularly after the Russia-Ukraine crisis, and the domestic food price were rising also. So these were the 4 factors. And then we were also increasing the utility prices. Utility prices, energy is a factor of production. When you increase the prices of your factors of production, it will be passed on to the consumer. Very simple. So all these factors were contributing to inflation, and that is why inflation went up to 40%. Now it has come down. Why? Your exchange rate is stable. So there is no push coming from inflation. Commodity prices have gone down. Wheat prices in Pakistan is down, right? Because of the good crop, and we imported from Ukraine, so that enhanced the supply of commodities. So wheat prices in Pakistan were down, globally food prices came down, energy prices came down, and your exchange rate remained stable. That were the factors which led to the decline in inflation. What is inflation? It is the persistent rise in prices. So the push to increase prices were not there. So that is why the जो पिछले साल प्राइस थी उसमें एडिशन जो हुआ है वो ओनली 1% हुआ, ठीक है ना? तो क्या स्टेट बैंक की जो मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी ने कम किया है? बिल्कुल नहीं. Because this is my empirical finding also. I have written a paper. I have given my paper to the Governor of the State Bank also. They know exactly what I'm saying, but they know they are constrained. They cannot cut down interest rate without getting nods from the IMF. Simple. Have I answered your question? That fiscal policy has become subservient to monetary policy.
My name is Ali Salman. Just back to defer, Dr. Ishfaq. I agree that currently, of course, in the IMF program, so the policies will be driven by that. But one tends to think that why we are in the IMF program, that's the central question, like 21st or 25th time. So the core reason is, of course, the spending part. And as you are aware that, last 15 years or so, our tax to GDP ratio has stayed flat around 10%, but the public expenditure to GDP ratio has doubled. So this responsibility of public spending is in the hand of the federal government and provincial government, and it is not the fault of IMF to actually dictate that. Similarly, the exchange rate devaluation is problematic, especially when it is steep, but it was not in the hand of IMF when our finance minister was fixated with the artificial value of dollars for a number of years while relaxing on CPAC dollars. So that was the flawed formula which led to the current account deficit. There was no IMF there. Provincial government NFC award that Dr. Asim very rightly pointed out, this flawed formula where the population is still major determinant of allocation of resources is not the fault of IMF. It is the fault of our political leadership. So once we are in the IMF program, then of course we have to follow the conditions. But and it is an ICU sort of situation. But then I think the primary cause is not that. Primary cause is something else, but which leads to IMF. So I think that's the sort of the equation I have in mind. Thank you.
बहुत अच्छा. Why we are under the IMF program? मैं सच नहीं बोल सकता हूँ, नहीं बोल सकता हूँ, constraint है, ठीक है ना? There are push factor and pull factor. 11 साल मैंने डील किया ना, मैं जानता हूँ कहाँ से टेलीफोन कॉल्स आते हैं, किसको आते हैं. ठीक है, वो क्या है उसको रहने दें कि वाई वी आर अंडर द IMF प्रोग्राम, उसको रहने दें, उसका जवाब मैं नहीं देना चाहता हूँ. तो बहुत सारी सेंसिटिव चीजें हैं, इशारा काफी होना चाहिए. जब मैंने कहा कि कुछ पुश फैक्टर होते हैं और कुछ पुल फैक्टर भी होते हैं, ठीक है ना? जो पुश होता है ना वो यहां से होते हैं, यहां पर स्ट्रेटेजिकली लोगों को प्लेस किया जाता है, जो बार बार प्राइम मिनिस्टर को कहेगा, ओहो प्राइम मिनिस्टर साहब, अगर हम IMF में नहीं गए तो तबाही है, बर्बादी है, हमें तो 3 साल में $75 बिलियन देने हैं, तो इस साल हमें $26 बिलियन देना है। ये बात 2017-18 से मैं सुन रहा हूं। हमारे पास तो ना $75 बिलियन आए, ना $26 बिलियन का हमारे पास रिजर्व है, पेमेंट ड्यू है। ठीक है, तो क्या हुआ, पाकिस्तान ने क्या डिफॉल्ट किया? तो ये सब बातें रहने दे, हमें बहुत कुछ पता है इसके बारे में। आपका जो सवाल था ना कि टैक्स टू GDP रेशियो स्टैग्नेंट है, बिल्कुल है। यही तो मैंने एक्सप्लेन किया, मेरे ख्याल में पता नहीं आप थे मेरे प्रेजेंटेशन में या नहीं थे। बिकॉज वी ट्रीट रेवेन्यू एज ए रेजिडुअल, इट हैज नथिंग टू डू विद इकोनॉमिक। हम टैक्स टू GDP जो है ना, GDP, ये मेरे नजदीक ये इररेलेवेंट कंसेप्ट है पाकिस्तान में, because it has nothing, our tax collection has nothing to do with GDP. This is a residual number, हमें दे दिया जाता है, या जो कट डाउन एक्सपेंडिचर, ये जो मैं आपको रेवेन्यू दे रहा हूं, इसको आप हासिल करो, बस कैसे करना है, दिस इज अप टू यू। तो हम पागलों की तरह टैक्स लगाते हैं, FBR के कमरे में बैठ जाते हैं। मैं करता रहा हूं ये काम, इसलिए मैं बता रहा हूं कि यार ये ड्यूटी, ये कौन सा टैक्स, ये आइटम है, इस पर क्या ड्यूटी है, सीधे 20% ड्यूटी है, इसको बढ़ाओ 40 पे ले जाओ, कितना आएगा पैसा, इतना आएगा। अच्छा जी, ये आइटम ले लो, कितना टैक्स रेट है, 15% है, यार इसको 30 कर दो, कितना आएगा, ये आएगा। इस तरीके से हम रेवेन्यू इकट्ठा करके IMF को दे देते थे, हो गया। एंड वी यूज्ड टू क्रिएट सो मच एनोमलीज इन आवर इंडस्ट्री दैट इट बिकेम मच चीपर टू इंपोर्ट कमोडिटी रादर देन प्रोड्यूस विद इन द कंट्री। ये हम काम करते रहे हैं, ठीक है। तो टैक्स टू GDP रेशियो, एक्सपेंडिचर ऑफ GDP रेशियो में कल्प्रिट तो मैंने आपको बता दिया। इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट इज द मेन, 80% ऑफ योर रेवेन्यू, टैक्स रेवेन्यू इज कंज्यूम्ड बाय इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट। तो कितना आप टैक्स बढ़ाएंगे? पिछले 5 सालों में our interest payment has grown at an average rate of 35% per annum. क्या रेवेन्यू बढ़ा सकेंगे आप 35% पर annum? पूछिए जरा, ठंडे दिल से सोचे। दूसरी चीज ये है, ये अक्सर सुनता हूं मैं, वो आर्टिफिशियली एक्सचेंज रेट को रोक के रखा था। यार कोई रस्सी है जिसने पकड़ के रखा, डॉलर कोई रस्सी है जिसको पकड़ के रखा हुआ, हिलने नहीं दे रहे हैं उसको? ऐसा नहीं होता है मेरे दोस्त, ऐसा नहीं होता है, कोई नहीं रोक सकता। ये मिथ हमने क्रिएट कर दिया है यहाँ पर कि नहीं, ऐसा नहीं होता है।
I think we should return to the topic, which is public finance for children and gender.
बिल्कुल हम हट जाएंगे।
It's not an open-ended, sir. Please return to the topic.
ऐसा नहीं होता है कि आपने रस्सी से पकड़ के रखा हुआ है, हिलने नहीं दे रहे हैं एक्सचेंज रेट को। अभी भी तो एक्सचेंज रेट नहीं हिल रहा है, एक्सपोर्ट भी बढ़ रहा है, रेमिटेंस भी आपके 40% बढ़ रहे हैं, करंट अकाउंट सरप्लस भी। यानी इंटरेस्टिंग चीज है कि when your exchange rate is stable, you have a current account surplus. हम ये कहते थे कि एक्सचेंज रेट डिप्रिशिएट इसलिए हो रहा है कि आपका जो है एक्सचेंज रेट ठीक नहीं है, वही एक्सचेंज रेट है स्टेबल, अब सरप्लस में आ गया। तो सोचने की चीज है कि हम क्या बातें कर रहे हैं। चलिए नेक्स्ट।
थैंक यू सर। लास्ट क्वेश्चन फ्रॉम आवर कोलीग फ्रॉम बलूचिस्तान।
अस्सलाम वालेकुम सर। अच्छा, 3 स्कूल ऑफ थॉट्स हैं जिनके सबके हमें स्ट्रॉन्ग एडवोकेट्स मिलते हैं हर जगह पे। फर्स्ट वन ये है कि गवर्नमेंट को एम्प्लॉयज की जरूरत नहीं है, ये इनकी सैलरी, इनकी पेंशन जो है गवर्नमेंट पे बोझ है।
किसकी?
गवर्नमेंट एम्प्लॉयज की सर।
गवर्नमेंट एम्प्लॉयज की सैलरी गवर्नमेंट पे बोझ है?
जी सर, हालांकि वो गवर्नमेंट की मशीनरी को रन कर रहे हैं। एक स्कूल ऑफ थॉट तो ये है। दूसरा ये है कि डिफेंस बजट जो है गवर्नमेंट पे बोझ है। और तीसरा ये है कि डेवलपमेंट जो PSDP है ये भी गवर्नमेंट पे। इसके बाद फिर ये आता है कि फिस्कल पॉलिसी इज सबसर्विएंट ऑफ मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी। तो सर फिर हमारी इकोनॉमी में रह क्या जाता है? अगर हम डॉक्टर आसिम बशीर वाली बात से चलें कि अगर जो कुछ लेफ्ट ओवर है वो वाइज मैनर में,
यार देखो, लेफ्ट ओवर सही बात है, लेफ्ट ओवर ही रहता है ना। मैं 100 रुपया 80 रुपया मैं इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट में दे देता हूं, कितना मेरे पास लेफ्ट ओवर बचा? 20। उससे आपने मुल्क चलाना है, उससे आपने एनवायरमेंट सेंसिटिव बजटिंग भी करनी है, उससे जेंडर सेंसिटिव बजटिंग भी करनी है, या जो भी अच्छे अच्छे लफ्ज अब ये बोले गए हैं वो सब करना है आप, उसमें डिफेंस को भी देखना है। ठीक है, हो सकेगा, नहीं होगा, आप बोरो करेंगे तो फिर जो मैंने आपको डेट का नंबर दिखाया है कि किस तरीके से डेट बढ़ा है हमारा, जब डेट बढ़ेगा इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट बढ़ जाएगा आपका, ये सारे एक दूसरे से लिंक है। तो यहाँ कोई स्कूल ऑफ थॉट की बात नहीं है, यहाँ बस थोड़ा सा मैनेजमेंट की चीजों को समझने की चीज है और मैनेज करने की चीज है।
Thanks to all the panelists for a very rich discussion. We got a very comprehensive overview of fiscal constraint, policy challenges, and possible solutions. Thank you very much, sir. Now we will go quickly for our third session. So I would request Madam Saima Bashir to take the lead.
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like the panelists to join me. So, Dr. Sajid Amin Sahab, Alhamdulillah. Dr. Sajid Amin is Deputy Executive Director, Executive Director Research at SDPI. Welcome, sir. We are honored to have Dr. Bela Raza Jamil, CEO Idara Talimo Agai, Center for Education and Consultation. Then we are honored to have Mr. Ali Salman, Founder and Executive Director, Prime. Thank you, sir. So in the third panel, we are going to talk about leveraging alternative financing opportunities to create fiscal space for public services. Before delving into the discussion, I just want to give you like an overview of this session. So in this last session, we will be oriented towards solutions to explore innovative and alternative strategies for expanding fiscal space in Pakistan, particularly those that go beyond traditional revenue generation and borrowing. Given the fiscal constraint faced by the government at all administrative levels, it is essential to identify pathways that can improve allocation efficiencies, expenditure efficiencies, resulting in high-impact social investment, especially in services benefiting children, adolescent girls, and marginalized communities. So I will encourage panelists to suggest or highlight efficiency-enhancing reforms, such as digitalization of public financial management systems, smart procurement, and targeted social programs that reduce waste and improve delivery. The session should also unpack emerging financing models like public-private partnerships, corporate social responsibility contributions, blended finances, and social impact bond, emphasizing both their potential and risk. With this in background, I will start the discussion, and I would like to start with Dr. Sajid Amin. Dr. Sajid Sahab, I would like you to discuss like what practical fiscal reforms can help reallocate public resources toward underserved population, especially the today we are talking about children, adolescent girls, and low income.
Thank you, Dr. Saima. Let me begin by congratulating you on taking this new role. And from SDPI, we look forward to working with you on the agenda that you are bringing in. Also, thanks to UNICEF and our team from SDPI to bringing children, gender within the macroeconomic policy context. Generally in Pakistan, we see it as a residual focus. It's not in a mainstream economic policy discussions. So this is really good to see Planning Commission talking economic policy lens on gender and children. I always say that gender is no more a separate policy. The world is now moving to gender in all and all in gender approach. There's no policy without gender lens. So we have to cut this divide. So my first submission is that every investment in country should have a gender lens. And I reiterate, it's gender in all and all in gender approach that we should speak on. If you allow me just one comment, the discussion that we have seen before, though Dr. Shfaq is not here now, so I won't go into details. But I think the populism is not only rise in politics, the populism is rise in the policy analysis as well. We intend to say things which has greater appeal, factually incorrect. So that's, I would like to just submit it. Just one line and then I come to my question. Pakistan goes to IMF. There's no conspiracy behind it. We have a flawed growth structure. A country having a growth structure financed by 90%, 95% by consumption, 90% by import. Whenever it goes beyond 3% of growth rate, we start having a balance of payment crisis and have to go to IMF. The rest are all stories. I can tell you so many of populism. I wish Ishfaq Saab was here and we could speak more on it. Coming back to the question that on alternative financing options available, there are so many, honestly. The challenge is not what are the options. The challenge is, are we ready to adopt those options? Is our public finance system ready for impact investments? Is it ready for impact bonds? Is it ready for social bonds? So to me, the fundamental question, as we are sitting at Planning Commission, of course, with Ministry of Finance and other people there, resources are there, but we are not ready to mobilize those resources, to cater those resources, because the investment framework in Pakistan, the time we speak on, is mainly guided by, aligned to, and adjusted for public investments only. It's not aligned, though we are moving in that direction. It's good to see at individual levels. We have many microfinances coming in. We have WAPDA coming for green bonds. Many other individual organizations going for impact investments. But the framework, for example, we don't have any impact metrics right now. How will measure the impact of investments? The accountability mechanism, the trace and track and monitoring and evaluation systems, they don't exist. Pakistan's procurement process and the system, for example, is aligned only with the public service, public investments. And that also runs only on grievances. If in any procurement there is no grievance on record, Pakistan's procurement system, PEPRA, does not have any tool to assess is it the fair procurement or not. So now imagine if you bring private sector in. So what should be the mechanisms? So I'll just give three submissions and then close. I know we're already letting so much late. So the first one is, and the overarching, that Pakistan now needs a public finance framework which caters the need for private investment and broadly alternative sources of financing, from corporate social responsibility to impact assessments and green bonds and all. For this, we will have to do 3 things at least. But the good part is that the government is thinking on. We had a discussion in Planning Commission, Ministry of Finance, that government is now developing a social impact framework. So which will be regulating kind of the social investments based on all the alternative sources, with the broader from the private sector coming in this one. But that's at a very infant stage. We need to fasten that process. But in Pakistan, we have so many frameworks. So to me, having a framework is another framework in already existing trillions of the frameworks that we do have already. So 3 things to do. Number 1, synergize all your frameworks of green financing, climate financing, your humanitarian financing, your social investments. So you have to have a unified framework. If Ministry of Climate Change has its own framework, P&D has its own framework, finance has its own framework, it's absolutely disconnect. So number 1 is to synergize. I'm not asking only one framework, but we need to synergize those frameworks which are there with the lens all in gender and children there. This will require easing the regulatory framework which can help promote social investments. The day this framework was being presented, a social delivery organization, SDO, in Pakistan needs 360 days to register itself only. Forget the operations. Just to register, you need 360 days. And we are talking about improving social investments, philanthropy, and corporate social responsibility and other. So ease those businesses. In Nepal, it needs 21 days. Another country, I don't think it's the right time to name, 9 days. These are peer countries that we have. 9 days registering SDO. In many countries, 1 day. We have 360 days. So number 1, align your existing regulatory frameworks from taxation, registration, PEPRA to this one. Private sector, social delivery organization, only 6% of them can participate in public procurement in Pakistan. Only 6%. They're not part of the system. Globally, you have so many things. So that's part 1, synergize and align your regulatory framework with this one. And this is a huge detail that we can go into. So I'm just giving a summary overarching. Number 2, we have to de-risk the social investments. They come for incentives. They come for earnings. So we have to have a very clear, modern, innovative tools, incentive structures, outcome matrices, impact evaluations embedded in the system with the clearly de-risking financing instruments. And that will require, and that's my last point, from the Central Bank of Pakistan, the State Bank of Pakistan, work on capital markets, the equity markets, the financial markets, because we don't have instruments for social investments. We have for larger infrastructure investment, but for the social investments, we lack those instruments. So I think we have to have overall this multiple approach kind of one. And finally, going beyond the documents, we have to have some forums which can enable as a body to promote social investments in Pakistan, where you bring all, and that will require all these 3 coming in there from regulatory framework, policy ease, and the capacity development for innovative financing instruments. Huge finance is there. It's on us how much we can sort of type of thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sajid. And you rightly said that every investment should have a gender lens. And all the three important aspects where we really need to work on to promote the social investment, they are very pertinent points. With that in mind, I'm going to Mr. Ali Salman. I would like because sometimes we are very much focused on what didn't work, but I really want to know, the models, the alternative financing models that have public-private partnerships, CSR, social impact bond, that have shown some promise in Pakistan for delivering child and gender sensitive services. Are there any success stories?
To answer your question in one word, yes. But I will spend the next few minutes to explain. So I think we need to talk about, as you said, the actual case studies, the lessons learned from these experiments from alternative financing perspective to create fiscal space. And I'll talk about three sectors briefly. One is the education, in which I'm going to share some a success story of some sort. But then also two other sectors in which I think some reforms is being made, that is pensions and housing. So education, since today we are talking about children, and so I think that is the most important topic for today. I'll spend more time. So last year, Prime Minister announced education emergency, 26 million children out of school. And then nothing happened. There was hardly a meeting or so, and then nothing happened. Then he forgot about that there was an emergency. But there is definitely. So we have large number of students out of school according to the data available. Although there are also disputes around the data set, but let's assume that we have a large population out of school. And we are spending, because school education is primarily a provincial subject, whatever resources are available, we are spending resources as well to the best possible extent we can. But this problem has multiplied over years. Out of school children has multiplied over years. And we all know that even the children from low-income families, poor families, who depend part of their children actually to work on their income, do not prefer to go to Sarkari schools. So Sarkar is building all the schools, paying salaries to teachers, and then those children are out of the school. So about 15 years ago in Punjab, actually this started, Punjab Education Foundation started a pilot project in the name of Punjab, in the name of Education Vouchers Scheme. This was inspired by theoretically by Milton Friedman, who presented the idea of vouchers initially. And it was proposed that instead of government directly building new schools by its own money, the government can actually fund the parents who would then get enrolled their children in private schools जहां भी वो रह रहे हैं. So जिन भी एरियाज में रह रहे हैं बच्चों को ये गवर्नमेंट ने कहा कि जी हम आपको पैसे देंगे, आप अगर आप इंश्योर करेंगे बच्चे एनरोल्ड हैं स्कूल्स के अंदर. And initially, actually, I did a study back then. It was about 10,000 students already उस वक्त education voucher scheme में पढ़ रहे थे. And it was in Lahore only. And then the study found out that most of the children who were out of school were actually started going back to school because the families, the parents preferred that वो जो छोटा स्कूल है जिसको हम बाज़ दफ़ा पसंद नहीं करते क्योंकि उनकी बिल्डिंग छोटी होती है, उसके अंदर प्ले ग्राउंड नहीं होते, लेकिन वो टीचर्स वर्क हार्ड कर रहे होते हैं, उनको पता होता है कि जी पक्की नौकरी नहीं है और हमने अपने बच्चों को अच्छे नंबर लेके जाना है मैट्रिक में, तो वो प्रेफर कर रहे थे. And gradually it started picking up. So their choice was given to the parents to get them enrolled, and the government, according to the enrollment, government would pay them that school, the partner school, after every quarter. And the scheme worked very well. Right now there are about 1 million students who are studying under that scheme across different provinces. So from 10,000 to 1 million, I think there is some success. Obviously, there are problems in how the scheme is being managed. Obviously, there are problems in discontinuation. There are also reports of withdrawal of some of the students. But by and large, I think this represents some success story. Especially in Pakistan, where the private schools, especially the low-cost, affordable private schools, have a significant portion in enrollment. About 30 to 40% are in private schools. So, and government, by the way, when government spends money, we're talking about alternative finances here. Punjab government, for instance, spends about 4,600 rupees per month per student. 4,600 rupees per month per student. Whereas the private school under this scheme is spend about 500 to 700 rupees. So the amount progresses as the grade progresses. So this is like 500 rupees to 1,500 rupees. Higher grade के ऊपर ज़्यादा पैसे मिल जाते हैं. So what it is showing it at a fraction of what we are spending, the government is spending, we are actually able to enroll more children. There is a lot of, I think, scale which can be achieved. Obviously, those private schools have also limitations in terms of, scalability, but we have certainly a potential solution. And then there are other models also which are working. So government is still taking responsibility. The important चीज ये है कि government ने कहा है constitution में कि जी हम बच्चों को finance करेंगे, तो government से हम responsibility ले नहीं रहे हैं. हम government को कह रहे हैं कि जी इसका जो mode है वो जरा change कर दें, आप उसको private public उसमें कर लें, और competition भी आएगा, private school की enrollment भी बढ़ेगी, और आप check रखें. So the foundation, Punjab Education Foundation, every 6 months conducts a test evaluation exam, और उसके मुताबिक फिर वो आगे चलते हैं बच्चे, उनके उस पे enrollment बढ़ती है. So I think we definitely have a small success story, because अगर पंजाब को उस तरह proportionally देखें, अगर 26 million का नंबर ठीक है तो 15 million पंजाब में होंगे जो बच्चे स्कूल से बाहर हैं. तो अगर आपने इस नंबर को डबल भी करना है तो you only need 6 billion rupees per year, जो आउट ऑफ स्किल, यानी कि अगर आपको उस नंबर को डबल करना है थ्रू द EVS स्कीम. हम इस वक्त 670 बिलियन रुपीस खर्च कर रहे हैं. 670 अरब रुपया एक साल में हम खर्च कर रहे हैं एजुकेशन, ओनली इन पंजाब. सो अ लॉट कैन बी डन बाय इंट्रोड्यूसिंग डिफरेंट मॉडल्स. इसी तरह ये भी हमने अगर अब ये प्रोविंशियल से अगर बात करें फेडरल गवर्नमेंट की पेंशन्स में थोड़ी सी रिफॉर्म्स आई हैं लास्ट ईयर भी. हम आई थिंक वी आर मूविंग टू द राइट डायरेक्शन कि जिसमें हमने प्राइवेट सेक्टर को इन्वॉल्व कर रहे हैं. पेंशन की जो बजटरी लाइबिलिटी है उसको हम कम कर रहे हैं और पेंशन सिस्टम को चेंज कर रहे हैं, उसमें प्राइवेट सेक्टर को लेके आ रहे हैं, कैपिटल मार्केट्स को एंगेज करने की बात कर रहे हैं एटलीस्ट. So this is important because pensions, both for civil and military, consume a significant portion of our budget. And those, these are the people who are no more working. So we are still responsible for them because there's a contract. But then there could be alternative, financing mechanism, which the world has developed. And I think it's not rocket science. We need deep capital markets to finance long-term pension schemes. So that can be done. Similarly, एक और एरिया जो politically बहुत पॉपुलर है और वो है हाउसिंग. हर गवर्नमेंट कहती है कि जी हमने लाखों घर बनाने हैं, हमने यहीं पर पाइड के साथ मिलकर एक स्टडी लॉन्च की थी इसी हॉल के अंदर आज से 2 साल पहले। उसमें एक तो ये नंबर चैलेंज हुआ था कि जी ये 10 मिलियन हमें शॉर्टेज नहीं है, शॉर्टेज कम है। लेकिन अगर आपने वो पूरा भी करना है तो आपने प्राइवेट सेक्टर को कैसे एंगेज करना है। There are private sector players who are already in the field, who are in this business. So rather than government doing it, financing it from fiscal sources, we can involve private sector with social impact investment and bring some results. Although there are some stories, I will not go into the details right now because of the time constraint. But again, I think there is possibility of expansion of these schemes. So in my conclusion is that we have limited finances. We have also managed financial situation. It's not very promising. Therefore, it is very important that whatever money we spend has to be spent very wisely, effectively, cost in terms of the output. An alternative means such as I proposed can be explored. Thank you.
So, thank you so much. Whatever the small success stories are there, but it's really heartening to hear about them. And definitely there is a scope to scale up and from the learning or the lessons from these different initiatives. So moving towards Dr. Bela Raza. So I just want to have your thoughts on a lot of donor communities around here and development partners, they are working. So I just want to know that how can the donor and external funding be better aligned with national equity goals, particularly the one which, as you know, Planning Commission has recently launched the Udan framework, and it has a whole pillar on equity, ethics, and empowerment. So, but we are totally cognizant of the fact that the donor and development partner support, there is a lot of financing coming up from them as well, and particularly. So how can we align with national equity goals, those funding and financing, and particularly those in the areas of the discussion today, like children, adolescents, and women?
Thank you very much. It's a privilege to be here with these panelists and also the fellow panelists and the ones that preceded the 2 panels earlier. And we're laying a very powerful framework within which this conversation is taking place. I want to start with 3 very important principles, which I think need to inform what we are saying in a context which is rapidly changing. But I love this whole notion of the VUCA world to make us understand how volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguity written that is, and what kind of an emotional toll and trauma that draws for large populations across the world. In a way, we are equalized. And so it's not a North-South discussion, it is everyone. The second piece, I wish, just like we had with Dr. Ashfaq, a real anatomy and trend analysis of debt and the macroeconomic framework, I wish we could monetize the challenges we face for children, young girls, mothers, etc., from a gendered and a child rights perspective. We don't have that. We haven't monetized it. If we'd monetized it, can you imagine putting it next to that? And I'd love for you people to imagine it, that if we were to juxtapose that in terms of losses in every indicator in the SDGs or however we want to see it within our framework, we would shudder. I don't think we could sleep even at night. We would be in a tremendous VUCA space. And the third aspect I think that we need to look at is that given whatever we are facing at this moment, both in terms of this tiny fiscal space that we have, in which we have to make hard choices, we know that increasingly because of the neglect over decades, the penny hasn't dropped that human development is important for this country since 1947. And we all talk about it, but it hasn't Because if it had, we would be in a slightly different space. Now it's become even more complex. So the third principle is the intersectionality of it. Today, even though I come from education, I cannot talk about the education crisis alone. That education crisis is now overlaid with the nutrition crisis, with the crisis of climate change, with the health crisis, and so on. And so we therefore have no other choices but to speak about the multi-sectoral approach of a lifelong cycle approach within which all this conversation needs to lie, through which we have to not only engage with our own population and society, but also other partners who want to partner with Pakistan on addressing this. So I just want that, to be really a part of how we want to approach it. The second part, I think, is so important from my perspective and the work that we've been doing is that data is getting better and better. Please, let's use our data to inform where do we begin. So if today there's an announcement by NADRA that we are going to not charge anything for CNICs, please can NADRA make another decision that we will not charge for birth registration of children, so that within 72 hours of them being born, somehow they're given their birth registration, the CRC, the child registration card, so that do not suffer that they cannot enroll in school or cannot be. Now that doesn't cost, or it costs very minimally and has huge outcomes. So today, if we are going to talk about transparency, efficiency, outcome-based financing, support, investment, these are the kind of low-hanging fruits for this country. I cannot face the world when we have to see, and I'm sure SDPR, all of us over here, when we have to say, we are still less than 50% birth registered. People get shocked, but this is a reality. This is a reality. And when you're not birth registered, the whole cycle of life is disturbed. And these are not small data points for us. But why can't we take that decision? I know there's so much else to do here, but we need to be able to see that if we are going to look at financing, which will lead to impact and outcomes, it is vital that we look at what are the different instruments which address issues. And even though in social protection, if you look at, I think we have got a very fine framing right from our the first 1,000 days of Nashanuma or Mamta and Sindh to then the BIS Wazaif-e-Taaleem program starting from age 4 to 22, etc., etc. But the question is, how well is it used? Does it really get good coverage? Do we really, knowing our national population census of 2023, do we know exactly where to hit it right so that those kids are really well covered, but also mothers are well covered? In terms of the innovative financing, and it was just discussed because now more and more donors and the country itself, because the donors are going to hear what the country is doing. Just now, Dr. Asim mentioned that in Sindh's budget, we're looking at almost 42% of development finance budgets coming from the development partners. Well, that's not right. If we are not wanting to invest in what really gives us the biggest benefits, then, we will not be able to draw the kind of financing we want to. I just wanted to correct one thing. So on public-private partnerships, even the Punjab story, today we are at 3 million. And we are paying 1,200 rupees per child versus the 4,000 plus per child. So even then, after raising the per child cost, the voucher cost, we are still at 1/4. And so I think it's the biggest success story because it's the largest public-private partnerships in the whole world, actually, of looking at 3 million. And if you add the Sindh Education Foundation, that's another million. And if you look at the Elementary and Secondary Education Foundation of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, that's almost another million or so. Now, 5 million children being addressed through the public-private partnerships through a very transparent process of procurement by the government of Pakistan, I think is a very big success story, but not many people know about how do we improve the communications on what we are doing, which is working out well. They have third-party evaluations and they have more outcomes-based ways of informing people. So closing 4 verticals we have, and we have to look at it seriously. The 4 verticals really are trying to mobilize forces. So because the development partners will say, have you exhausted yours before you come to us? Mm-hmm. And so the 4 verticals, I think, which are very important, come from oil, gas, and minerals. And if we are not able to put aside money for human development from there, then that's not right. Not for the people from where they're coming, and not really right for the government of Pakistan to not make, the right choices. The second vertical that we have definitely has to look at the businesses, and we have not done well in CSR at all. All we have is, even with the SECP, just a notification. It's not a statutory obligation like we have in India, a cess fund for education. That's gone up from 1% to 2%, a bit more. It's in fact generating more resources than even the education budgets. So I think that's a very important part. How do we raise our own innovative financing from what's happening and so on? The third piece, which is, I think, becoming more and more important, we've spoken on public-private partnerships, but we have in Pakistan also done many alternate and innovative financing, from sukuk bonds to diaspora and remittance bonds, which are, by the way, oversubscribed. If they can be, then why are we not doing it for children, girls and women, from a gendered lens, from a child rights lens? And similarly, we have right now many initiatives, including not just the climate bonds that are coming, but also the nutrition bonds. And as we sit here today, there's a meeting taking place, I think, just now in London at the Education World Forum on the nutrition bonds right now, as well as on the International Financing Facility for Education Development, for which Pakistan has been offered 500 million for education. So for every $1 of equity from donors from Pakistan, we will get $7. Now, if communication, which was both to our minister and prime minister in September 2024, not being implemented, well, it's shocking. And as was mentioned earlier when we started, that let's have a high-level technical working group to get all of these going. Because if this is not going to happen, then it's never going to happen. Because these are things which are offered to Pakistan. And if Pakistan cannot get its act together for its children and women and girls, well, it's tragic. And finally, we come to the big stories we've been hearing about impact bonds. Now, outcome-based financing has both social and development impact bonds. Now, the social impact bonds are done by the government itself. These are from domestic financing and government sources. But the development impact bonds have a blended finance option. But both happen through a very transparent outcome-based financing proposition. And that means that you are committing not to activities, but to outcomes. That shift is so important, because I just remember sitting right here with Shaukat Aziz Saab as a technical advisor to the ministry, doing the first debt swap of 429 million Canadian dollars, which was offered to us in 2000. And 2001-2, we started that swap. Well, what did we do with that? Half the time, we never understood it was our money. We thought it was the Canadian money. It was ours. The Canadian money was only the TA. So we need to understand all of these things better, which means we have to have investment, a small investment, in building capacity to understand innovative finance, because then you can argue well with your donors. Then you can ensure that your systems are better in place. And finally, you can show results. And I think the biggest winners and your biggest supporters can be the people of this country, to be able to have more confidence in the government and the governance structures, which are still suffering because we are still not being able to make that shift. in our National Finance Commission Award of still having population. We are not penalizing, because that's the biggest elephant in the room. We have population-based ways of giving weightage to how much which province will give. So you are encouraging people, incentivizing to produce more children. Now, when will this end? How can we? So that's where the children are suffering in terms of, that's where all our basic maternal mortality rate, infant, under 5 mortality rate, stunting, all of them keep on multiplying because our services are not in place and they're not outcomes based. I would like to just end there, but I think it's a great initiative that has been taken pre-budget. Congratulations to all of you, UNICEF, SDPI.
Thank you so much. In the interest of time, I regret we cannot take the questions from the audience and from the floor. We do have the CDWP meeting planned at 2 right here, so we need to wrap up. First of all, I really want to thank all the guests, all the panelists who took their precious time from their busy schedule. Thank you so much for a very healthy discussion. As we conclude this important dialogue, allow me to express my sincere gratitude to all participants, economists, government officials, civil society leaders, and our international development partners for your rich insights and active engagement throughout the day. What we have witnessed here is more than just a policy discussion. It is a collective commitment to reshape Pakistan's fiscal landscape to be more inclusive, more equitable, and more responsive to the needs of our children, youth, and marginalized communities. Today's dialogue has taken place against the backdrop of a shifting macroeconomic landscape, and as I discussed earlier in the opening remarks, that real GDP growth rate stands at 2.38% in financial year 2024, a clear signal that the economy is in recovery mode. Tight fiscal and monetary policies, though necessary for rebuilding buffers and containing risk, will continue to constrain public investment in the short term. Though inflation has eased significantly from 38% to around 6%, marking the lowest yearly inflation since 2019, a welcome development for household welfare, particularly the poor. And yet the poverty rate remains stubbornly high, estimated at 22% based on National Poverty Line. So the changes which we are seeing in the fiscal space, however, must now translate into sustained and equitable investment. Like all the inflation is going down, our GDP is growing, so it needs to translate into the sustained and equitable investment, particularly in education, health, nutrition, and social protection. We cannot lose sight of the fact that 25.6 million children are out of school, as Ali Salman was talking about, and Pakistan's universal health coverage index stands at 53%. And rural women still face disproportionate barriers to health access due to mobility and cultural constraint. And as Dr. Bela was talking about, that Pakistan is also experiencing rapid population growth. So this population could be an asset if right investment is done in the human capital of this youth. This is why today's focus on child and gender responsive fiscal policy is not just timely, it is essential, because no macroeconomic recovery can be sustained if it leaves behind a generation of children out of school or a majority of young women excluded from the workforce. Throughout the day, we have explored pathways to unlock new fiscal space through tax reforms, efficiency gains, digitalization, result-based financing, public-private partnerships, and better alignment with development aid. We have also reaffirmed that transparency, parliamentary oversight, and citizen engagement are foundational to effective and accountable public financing. Moving forward, we would let me end with this. Inclusive development is not a cost, it is an investment. When we prioritize the needs of our most vulnerable population, we are not just advancing social justice, we are also laying the foundation for long-term economic stability. Let us move forward with the urgency and resolve this agenda demands. The government stands ready to work with all stakeholders to ensure that fiscal policy becomes a tool, not just of economic management, but of human transformation. And Udan Pakistan is an example of that. Thank you once again for your participation, your partnership, and your commitment to building a more inclusive and resilient Pakistan. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.